more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians
That's right.
as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Good morning, 6 o'clock, Wednesday, the 21st of June. Today,
search efforts have continued through last night and today. We know there's about 40 hours of breathable air. So I want to reiterate, this is a very complex search, and the unified team is working around the clock.
The search for the missing Titanic tourist sub has reached a critical point as banging is picked up by sonar devices. A new document shows safety concerns were raised before the vessel's disappearance. The latest inflation figures out at 7 o'clock this morning. Is the UK on track for a mortgage time bomb?
It's Prince William's 41st birthday today. Happy birthday, Prince William. We'll be finding out how he'll be celebrating and why his mother inspired his latest initiative. And in sport, a bad night for England, but a better night for those north of the border.
Yeah, well, in Scotland, I mean, it was completely wet. They were aquaplaning across the pitch. They're through then to, well, more Euro qualifiers coming up after winning 4 on the trot. But I'm very, very, very disappointed about the Ashes first test.
Plus, it's officially summer solstice today. Will there be sunshine where you are?
Weather stays changeable in the north over the next few days, but in the south, increasingly sunny skies and increasingly high temperatures. How hot will it get? I'll have the full details in the weather coming up.
Good morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News. That's nice.
Oh, and that's your name on the title sequence for once.
Nice. I hadn't actually noticed that. Stephen said, look, you can see your name.
Yeah, well, it's nice. It's about time.
Oh, that's nice.
It's about time. So we thought we'd bring you a Wednesday special this morning.
Yeah.
A midweek special to pep you up for the rest of the week.
Yes.
Because you were out, you've had a busy week, haven't you?
I have. This is day 6 of 6. Yes, I've been to Ascot. I've been to Boris Johnson's house. I've been to Nottingham. It's been very busy for the last 6 days.
How was Ascot yesterday?
The best. I had the best time. I just love Ascot. It's got everything you want. It's got fashion, royals. You know I love both of those. And then the racing as well. I do enjoy a bit of racing. Do you get into it? Yeah. I couldn't place a bet yesterday. I was working.
Too busy.
Too busy. It was pretty crazy down there, but it was great fun. And the King and the Queen were there, and they just
look at that picture. That's on the front of the Telegraph.
Fabulous. They were really enjoying themselves.
I don't know what happened to prompt that picture.
I would say Camilla's losing. What do you think?
Probably, but it's great, isn't it? I just think that's a really great shot.
But it was great. It was great to see so many of them because there was the King and Queen, of course, and then we had Princess Anne as well, and then Zara and Mike Tyndall were there as well. Yep, they were there.
You had a right day hobnobbing then.
Princess Beatrice walked past her as well.
Oh.
Yeah, and her husband, Edo. So they were all there, and I don't know how much of that is to do with her late Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II, because you know she loved Ascot loads.
Oh, she did.
So maybe that was them trying to come together and, you know, pay tribute, if you will. But it was very nice.
Maybe. Anyway, we're going to be back at Ascot today, aren't we? Paul Hawkins is there. We'll bring you that. It's about 9:15 this morning. So we'll get the latest from him on day 2 as it gets underway.
I wonder which royals will be there today.
Yeah, I don't know. If you've got any thoughts on anything you want to talk to us about today, gbviews@gbnews.com. Robin is standing by, waiting for your emails in the newsroom. So get them sent through and he'll bring them straight through to us here in the studio. In the meantime, our main news for you this morning, and rescuers searching for the Titan sub have reportedly heard banging sounds close to where the vessel went missing. And now we know that safety fears were raised over the vessel before it went missing. That's according to the latest reports.
Yes, a massive search and rescue operation is still underway to find the submersible, which has been lost for nearly 2 days in the Atlantic Ocean with 5 people aboard.
Now, according to the authorities, crew members have about 30 hours of oxygen left. Now, international planes and ships have joined the search mission, understandably.
Well, GB News presenter Pip Thompson is here with us now. Good morning to you, Pip. Really good to see you this morning. I mean, this has reached a critical point now, hasn't it? That clock is ticking down. 30 hours we hear that's left on those oxygen tanks. And now we're hearing about banging sounds that are being picked up.
Which could be a sign of hope. Let's just first of all show you the map, just so we've got an idea again of the situation with the North Atlantic. Let's just locate it. Can we just show you this map here? Right, so there's Newfoundland. That's the wreck of the Titanic. Now, that is, as you can see, in a very remote part of the North Atlantic, some 400 miles from Newfoundland. So all these boats, all these aircraft, they've got to get into that part of the sea. The submersible, it's effectively like a little, well, I suppose a bus It's a small bus in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It's some 9.5 feet wide, 22 feet long. That gives you an idea of how tiny it is. Only one person on that submersible can stretch their legs out when they're in there. You know, you can't imagine what they are going through at the moment. But, as you were just saying, Ellie, what we've heard in the last few moments is that the US Coast Guard has confirmed that a Canadian... That photo, actually, we understand, maybe they can just confirm to me, that is the last known sighting, we believe, of the submersible. That was on Sunday. The US Coast Guard says that a Canadian P-3 aircraft has detected underwater noises in the search area. Now, that was widely reported in the US media over the last few hours. So they're focusing on that location. So far, the results have been negative, but at least that does give a little cause for hope, because that banging sound was heard at some 30-minute intervals and went on for about 4 hours. So that is actually quite crucial information. But what the hope is, obviously, is that the submersible has risen to the surface. It's on the surface. OK, it might be like looking for a needle in a haystack, but there is a hope of getting people out. Slight issue is that it's bolted from the outside, so they haven't got a hope of getting themselves out. They need rescuing. If, catastrophically, it is on the seabed, and that is, how deep's that? Some 3,800 metres down on the seabed. If it is down there, then how do you actually get to them, even if they are still alive? Because it's just unheard of to actually have the resources to be able to do that. It's very, very difficult. So, yeah, hopefully the vessel will be on the surface. A friend, actually, of Hamish Hunter, he's the businessman, he's a world record holder. I think we've got a picture of him that we can see. He's very well known in this field. Can we see a picture of Hamish? He will be experienced in this situation. So will some of the other passengers. And a friend of his has said, it is your worst nightmare, but he will be very calm, he will be cool, and he will be very composed. He will be helping, the other people there stay calm, because I think the situation is with this loss of oxygen, they will need to keep their heart rates down. They will need to stay incredibly calm. It's very cold. They're saying, if they are that far below, it could be temperatures of some 3 Celsius. I mean, near to freezing. It's black. You can't see anything down there. I mean, just talking about this makes me shiver. Does it not do the same to you?
It's an awful situation. Pip, for now, thanks very much indeed. Let's talk to the president of Lifeguard Systems, Butch Hendrick, who joins us now from New York. Butch, good to see you this morning. I mean, what are the options here, do you think?
The options are reasonably similar to what they were 3 days ago. However, we're just getting a shorter and shorter window to make those pieces happen.
Is part of the issue here because we don't know just how deep or not this submersible may be at the moment, but the search area is huge, isn't it?
The search area is, yes, it's minimum 400 miles by 400 miles. And as we start to play, it's 12,500 feet below the surface. So potentially, the surface area is millions of square feet.
Wow. I mean, Butch, you described the search area there. It is vast. How much hope do you think we should read into the fact that banging sounds have been picked up in that search? That would indicate, perhaps, that they are within that search area?
Yes, and certainly the banging sounds, and I believe, as you just stated a few moments ago, that they were at specific intervals. There were certain sounds coming out. There was a break of a period of time, and then similar sounds coming again. That's extremely positive, and it could lead us back to one of my original theories, that the submersible is entangled somewhere within the debris field of the Titanic.
So if that's the case, what are the options for a rescue? Because it would involve getting another submersible down there, and that's going to be problematic, isn't it?
That is going to be extremely difficult. There are only a couple of units in the world that can do that kind of depth. And most likely, what would happen is we'd be using an unmanned remote controlled vehicle, an underwater rover. It would have to be able to make contact with the unit, with the submersible. It would have to be able to make physical contact in order to relieve it from any entanglements or problems that it does have. And most of your robotic submersible SUVs are capable of having manipulative arms. We can put cutting tools on them, grab tools, clutches. They can change them like a robot. So it could be that it could free it, but then we have the problem of how do we bring it back to the surface? Now, with any luck, if it's simply entangled, the moment we could free it, it may be able to bring itself back to the surface. That's what it is, they've said, is designed to do. If it hasn't come up, it's because it can't. If we have to try and figure out how we're going to go down and make an attachment, 13,000 feet of cable is going to be reasonably impossible. So there has to be other ways of getting it off the bottom. But again, the positive for me is that if the banging is taking place and it is entangled, which I've been saying for several days now, is what I believe happened to it, then it could potentially bring itself back to the surface once it was freed.
Okay.
Well, let's hope. Yeah, let's hope so. Butch, really good to talk to you this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
It's a terrifying prospect.
Oh, it is.
All of that. It's the stuff of nightmares, isn't it?
It really, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's making so many headlines and so many people are talking about it. It is because it is the stuff of nightmares. It's what you think of being trapped, being in the dark, being in the cold, not being able to get out. I mean, it's just awful, isn't it? And now we're hearing about these safety fears which were raised years ago. I mean, there's going to have to be an investigation into this, isn't there?
Mind you, these daredevils who want to do this sort of thing, I mean, do people get too blasé about it? In today's day and age, technology is so great and everything, just think, oh, we'll do this, it'll be fun, it'll be safe, without actually really appreciating the dangers involved.
Is there something in being a multi-millionaire, multi-billionaire where you think you're invincible?
Very possibly. Very possibly.
Interesting.
You know, but just keep our fingers crossed. Clearly, it would seem to be at least signs of life, and that's got to be a good thing. So we'll see where that takes us over the next 24 hours or so. Yeah,
I mean, as Butch said there, he thinks that's very, very positive news. But let us know what you make of that story, or indeed any of the stories that we're talking about today. gbviews@gbnews.com. We do love to hear from you, don't we?
We do. Now, the latest monthly inflation figures for May are going to be released this morning just after 7 o'clock.
Yes, with the cost of living crisis continuing and concerns of even higher mortgage rates, our reporter Anna Riley has been speaking to people in Hull about their day-to-day spending.
Energy, I would say definitely. It's gone up vastly compared to what I was paying, well, a year ago, really. But also food prices.
Your food bills, every time you go and shop, it's gone up. Not just 5p, it goes up 50p and more.
Just about everything what's going on, it's so dear now, I can't afford things what I used to.
So groceries, etc. have gone up by at least, 50% nearly, you know, it seems to have gone up a lot.
I can't just think of specific items, but I just know that where I used to spend about £6 at the weekend, now I'm spending 20.
Well, let's speak to Senior Research Fellow at the Institute of Economic Affairs, Dr. Jamie White, who joins us now. Really good to see you this morning. What do you think we will hear today?
I think that my guess, if I had to guess, I don't really want to, is that it'll come down. And the reason for that is that interest rates have been going up for some time now, and there's a lag. It's well known to be a lag in the effect. So if you put interest rates up, you don't see the effect on inflation for quite some time, something like a year, actually. But interest rates have been going for a while now, and they should start to grip, so to speak, soon, and we'll see inflation coming down. It's come down a fair bit in the United States.
I mean, we're going to hear about interest rates tomorrow from the Bank of England. I mean, would you suggest that they then stall it? They don't up interest rates in order for that 1 year, as you say, to hit, for it to be felt through the market? Because as you keep ramping up the interest rates, I mean, life becomes unaffordable for so many people, such as we're seeing with mortgages.
Well, the problem isn't so much really what interest rates are now. It's what they used to be. I mean, interest rates aren't especially high by long historic standards. What they're high in comparison to is what interest rates have been since the financial crisis in 2008. And we've had this really extraordinary period of interest rates being close to zero. And of course, a lot of people have gone and got mortgages at those very low rates. And now they're suffering because interest rates have come up a lot. But really, you would expect interest rates to be above 3%. They usually were in the past. And the thing to note is that they're still significantly lower than inflation. So that's to say we still actually have negative real rates of interest. That's to say, if I put my money in the bank and I leave it there for a year, when I take it out, even after the interest has been paid, I've got less purchasing power than I had before. So we don't have positive real rates of interest. And there are all sorts of bad effects that has on an economy when you have negative real rates of interest. People don't save in particular. So I actually hope that interest rates, I know there's pain for consumers, but I hope that interest rates won't go back down to near zero like they were, that they'll stay up at around, let's say, 4%.
Right. Well, a lot of people will flinch at that. Because as you say, historically that's pretty normal. The problem is, we have got used to 2008 onwards sort of figures, and society adjusts to that. How long would it take for us as a society, I mean internationally even, for us to readjust to life with those sort of interest rate figures and to be able to balance everything else out around it?
Okay, just remember that for every borrower there is a lender. So that's to say that, yes, it's nice to borrow money at 1%, but it's not very nice to have your savings earning a return of 1%. And this has actually been very tough this period on, savers, on people who are living off savings, for example, who are getting a very low return on it. So, we always look at just one side of the equation. But I think, what really has to happen to adjust, and this is painful, some people are going to take losses on their mortgages. That's to say, the value of the house will come down because as the mortgage payments go up, you can't borrow as much to buy a house. Therefore, the house prices come down. The people who had borrowed before had, let's say, a large mortgage in relation to the value of the house. They might find that their house is worth less than their mortgage. They've got so-called negative equity. They may become forced sellers of their house. That brings a cycle of house prices declining. Those people take the loss, house prices come down, and then it's all adjusted and we're back to kind of normal situation that we might have been in 20 years ago. So that's unfortunately, there's no pain-free way out of this.
No, that's the harsh reality, isn't it? Jamie White, we've got to leave it there, but appreciate your time this morning. Thank you. I've got to say, it's the first time I've heard someone talk this time around about negative equity.
Yeah.
That was the situation in the 90s, wasn't it? It was horrific for a lot of people.
And isn't that a terrifying prospect? Yeah. I mean, for people who are coming off their fixed-rate mortgages now, they are in for a shock, aren't they?
Yeah, if that affects you, get in touch. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
OK, the time is 90 minutes past 6. Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
Well, the government's going to set out a major package of financial support for Ukraine to bolster economic stability. The funding, which includes $2.35 billion of World Bank loan guarantees, will support vital public services, including the cost of running schools and hospitals.
There's been a significant rise in the number of teenage girls diagnosed with eating disorders in recent years. Experts say there could be a postcode lottery of care, with those in more deprived areas unable to access the support that they need.
Pet insurance payouts reached a record high in 2022, more than £1 billion in claims. That's 28% up from the previous year, according to the Association of British Insurers. That worries me, actually, a little bit. The insurance claims going up 28%, because you know what that means? Premiums are going to go up.
Premiums
and it already costs a fortune to insure your pet.
Does Timmy cost you a lot of money?
He's not insured, though.
Oh!
Timmy's not insured. Because he was a rescue cat and he'd previously had a broken leg, apparently, according to the RSPCA, they wouldn't insure him.
Oh, really? Is that...
Yeah, they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it. So it's never been an option.
Oof. And has that hit you in the pocket?
We've had a couple of big bills over the years, but I don't know that it's cost us any more than it would have cost with insurance.
Because pet insurance is a lot of money. I mean, I was talking to a photographer the other day, actually. We were outside Boris Johnson's house.
Oh, there you go.
Forest, he never came out.
No, don't blame him.
He was telling me about his dog. Obviously, we got talking about dogs. And he said it was £180 a month. And it was a fit, healthy dog, but he just said it's really expensive, yeah.
You see, I wouldn't pay that. I'd rather just see what the bills were going to be.
And he said so far it's worked out because he has had an operation, so he was like, it's kind of worked out. It's a lot of money. I mean, we're talking about inflation and interest rates and cost of living. £180 a month on insurance.
Yeah, it's
a lot, isn't it?
It's a lot. It doesn't cost that much for life insurance and things for us, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Animals are more expensive than humans most of the time.
Sometimes we love them more than humans.
Well, they're less problematic.
Well, it's true.
They don't argue back.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
They don't give you lip.
They don't give you lip, no. They don't moan about you behind your back.
Yeah.
All that sort of thing.
All that stuff. Well, let us know if that's affecting you. Pet insurance policies, the price of them, it's a lot, isn't it? GBViews at GBNews.com. Now, the Prince of Wales is celebrating his 41st today. I sort of thought he was a bit older than that somehow. I don't know why. Yeah, he's younger than you think, I think. Yeah. Anyway, he's expected to unveil a major campaign on homelessness later this month. Well, it's a cause that the future king's championed since childhood, when his mother, Princess Diana, took them along to a homeless shelter. Well, to mark his 40th last year, William helped sell The Big Issue magazine with Dave Martin, a street vendor, and our royal correspondent Cameron Walker caught up with him.
Homelessness has always stuck with me as a topic and as an issue I want to fight for. And so I've done everything I can to kind of raise the profile of homelessness, and I want to do a lot more.
In Prince William's view, homelessness is an overlooked and misunderstood problem. He refuses to believe the issue is just a fact of life and thinks a continued focus and a big support network could be the answer. Chris Fauci-Stead, frontline director at The Big Issue, agrees.
I think homelessness can absolutely be eradicated. If we think back to COVID, every single person basically was brought in. So it can be done. But there are long-term issues that need to be solved around mental health, addiction, and enough funding. And I think there still needs to be a lot more work on that. And I hope that actually that's where William will put his focus.
The Big Issue magazine exists to give homeless, long-term unemployed, and marginalised people the opportunity to earn money. To mark his 40th birthday last year, the Prince of Wales went undercover on the streets of London, selling magazines with Big Issue vendor Dave Martin. William was only meant to spend 20 minutes with Dave, but stayed for a whole hour until every magazine was sold.
He came across as just like you and me, you know. We got chatting natural, like you do.
He may be future king, but William chose to spend his 40th birthday last year surprising Dave with birthday cake at his pitch in Hammersmith. In return, Dave gifted his own artwork, which now hangs in Kensington Palace, according to a thank you letter the Prince had written him. William also penned an article for The Big Issue, highlighting how vendors are barely given a second glance by passers-by. Recent research from Shelter shows more than 250,000 people are homeless in England. Numbers living in temporary accommodation has risen by an alarming 74% in the last decade, something the charity believes is driven by the chronic shortage of social homes and an over-reliance on expensive and unstable private renting. Kensington Palace says His Royal Highness is expected to unveil a major campaign on homelessness later this month.
Because of who he is and connections with the Big Issue, it'd be good for him to highlight the situation.
Prince William hopes to bring his own children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis, to see what he calls fantastic organisations doing inspirational work to support those most in need, just as Princess Diana did for him. Cameron Walker, GB News.
It's why I like him.
Oh, me too.
Isn't
it lovely? I mean, his legacy, his mother's legacy,
Mm.
you know, into the next generation, it's beautiful, really.
Yeah, it is, and it's just the fact. It's a legitimate point to say what does he think he can actually achieve? You know, going and hanging about with someone for an hour last year for his fall, does it achieve anything? But it highlights issues. I mean, that's their role. They highlight issues, and he's putting his money where his mouth is now. But I do think that says a lot, actually.
Yeah.
It says a lot. I'm very impressed with William.
Me too. He seems really down to earth, doesn't he? He seems actually a genuinely really nice guy.
Yeah.
That's my impression. I've never met him, but that's my impression. And the same with Catherine as well, actually.
Yeah.
Comes across as really lovely.
Yeah.
Good with people, like Diana was.
Yeah. If you've met them, get in touch. Let us know what you thought. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Have we got the picture of Elliot Ascot? I don't know if we can dig that up. Wilhelmina in Leicester. Now, Wilhelmina emailed me a couple of weeks ago to complain about my shirt.
Oh.
Because she works in men's tailoring, don't you, Wilhelmina? I remember you, Wilhelmina. Anyway, she says, Ellie, I wish you were wearing that amazing hat you wore to Ascot yesterday. You see, that's stunning. You look gorgeous.
Oh, thanks.
Absolutely
it was a bit,
gorgeous.
How do I describe this? Not low-key.
No, it wasn't low-key.
But it's Ascot, you've got to do that.
When are you ever low-key?
Well, that's true.
And Christine says, Ellie, I love the hat you wore yesterday. Such a creative design.
Aw, thank you so much. Alice Brooks is the lady whose hat it was. I can't take credit for it. She made it. And I've rented it from her, thank you very much. So it's going back to her. But, yeah, it was lovely. Very fashion, though, I would say. Eamonn Holmes yesterday said it looked like a swarm of blue bottles, the flies. So I couldn't really unsee it after that. But I was going for a monochrome, dramatic look.
Very well, you do it very well. It's gorgeous.
Thanks.
It's gorgeous.
And somebody else said it looked like my jacket wasn't done up properly.
No, I thought that was fabulous. You do look really nice.
Oh, thank you. It is meant to be like that. But, yes, it was a lovely day. It was wonderful. And the royals were there as well, so that's what everybody wanted to see, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, well, we haven't got royals in the studio, but got the next best thing. Paul Coyte is going to bring us the latest on Australia's 2-wicket win over England in the Ashes. He'll be here very shortly. This is Breakfast on GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Welcome back. The time is 6:30 on the nose. Still lots to come on today's programme.
Yeah, today marks the first day of summer and the longest day of the year. Well, that means it's going to start getting darker again. Well, that's depressing. 10 to 7, we're heading to Stonehenge to see how the pagans, I guess, are they?
Yeah.
How are they going to be celebrating?
Check in with the pagans.
Oh, they're kissing the stone.
And is the age of the alpha male over?
Oh, I hope not.
Yeah.
What will I do?
Oh, well, and do women want a cinnamon roll man instead? Nice
what?
and soft and sweet. We'll be debating that at 7:20. And that's going to get you talking at home.
It's weird.
Does the alpha male exist anymore?
So macho.
Or are we
Those
all...
days gone.
Or are they all cinnamon rolls, nice and soft and sweet and spongy? I don't know how else you'd describe a cinnamon roll.
I don't know. Half-baked.
Half-baked. Yeah, very good, very good.
Let us know what you think.
Yeah.
GBViews at gbnews.com.
What's your type? Oh, dear.
You see, if they get rid of macho men, it's bad news for me and Paul Coyd.
It really is.
Because what will we do, Paul?
I don't know. What are we going
Is
to do?
our allure gone?
I know. That's part of our charm, isn't it?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I see you both as little cinnamon rolls.
Oh, now,
thanks.
come on, Ellie, you know that's not true.
You're so nice and sweet,
No,
both of you.
No, we're tough and mean.
Tough exterior.
But I'll tell you what, yeah, you've got a good combination going on.
Right, OK.
Alpha on the surface,
Yes.
cinnamon roll when you cut into it.
We slice into you, Paul. You're nothing but cinnamon.
I'm all cinnamon. Yeah.
What would you describe yourself as?
Slightly stale cinnamon. Yeah. Probably.
Rock hard.
I reckon a rock cake.
Past your past your sell-by date.
Well, maybe, but only by a couple of days. Still edible, but slightly over the past.
Need to pop in the microwave.
I think so. Yeah, and it'll be fine. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Is that how
we do this?
Is that how we describe England at the Ashes at the moment?
Yes.
You need to freshen up in the microwave.
I've got to tell you, I'm so upset about this. I don't know whether it showed, but I am very upset. I've dedicated 5 days of my life to watching pretty much every ball bowled in the first test against Australia in the Ashes, and it really went down to the wire. I mean, it really did, and it was so tense. There was rain. They didn't get out until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. England needed 7 more wickets. Australia needed 174 runs, and then it went right down till 7:21 last night when Pat Cummins, the Australian captain, who, by the way, I hate. Can I just say that? Is that a bit strong?
That's
Look,
strong.
I'll tell you why.
Why?
Look,
What's
there
wrong
he
with
is.
him?
Because not only is he the Australian captain, not only did he score the winning runs, but he's far too good-looking for his own good as well, isn't he? That's that's probably the main reason. But he's
a little bit jealous, Paul.
Well, maybe a little bit. But he's an incredible cricketer and fast bowler and Australian captain. But he saw them home. But we still have more tests to go, so the Ashes is not over yet. Bazball, we discussed Bazball before, didn't we? Remember Bazball?
Yeah.
Which is the style of cricket
yes.
adopted by. You do remember though, don't you? Adopted by Ben Stokes and Brendan McCullum, who is Baz, that's his nickname. And it's this swashbuckling, devil-may-care style of cricket which makes it much more exciting. It does sometimes, whereas Australia didn't do that. They were thinking, well, we'll just see what we can do and just bat and do, and nothing too exciting. Whereas England were much more exciting, but didn't come through this year.
Is it all their own fault for declaring too early?
It's a very good point. It could be because Joe Root was playing really well in the first test, but the reason that the declaration happened was just thinking, well, look, we could get maybe sort of half an hour at bowling Australia and see if we can get some wickets early on the first evening. Didn't happen, but that's the gamble you take. So it's a good point, but you know what? Maybe they'll learn from that next time.
Maybe.
You're very scrubbed up on your cricket knowledge.
Oh, you've been paying attention.
Every time I work with you, you come up with something.
I know.
He does. He's
You're
star
stunned,
pupil.
aren't
I am stunned into silence, or nearly.
Yeah.
Not quite.
Should we talk about Jack Grealish? Because he's been he's had a busy few weeks, hasn't he?
He has had a busy few weeks.
He's enjoyed himself.
Bless him.
Good on him.
Jack, how do you feel about Jack? You love Jack?
Yeah, I just sort of think... I know there's been all this criticism because he's been out on the lash for weeks.
Yep.
But why not? They won the treble. Why not?
Right, well, there he is. There you go. Someone just poured booze
He is so funny.
into the top of the coach. The way I feel about Jack Grealish, He's a lovely lad, and he does some amazing stuff. He's brilliant with fans. He's brilliant with charities. He's got a heart of gold. He says he's living the dream, and, you know, he turned up for England duty where he was hungover. As long as he can deliver afterwards, that's fine. But I think the only problem I have, and if I do have a problem with it, and that is, if you're going out partying, if you're doing all that, if you're going clubbing till 6, fine, go out and do it. But when you have the parade, and that's when you start pouring vodka and they're smoking cigars, that's when you are actually working for the club. That's when you're representing the club. That, for me, I don't know whether I'm sounding like an old fuddy-duddy here.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
I think that's a fair point.
I don't want to see them just pouring booze down. You are on display. And that is when you are a role model, whether you like it or not. I've had this conversation with loads of sports people over the years. And some will say, well, it's not my choice to be a role model. I just happen to have found myself in this situation. But I don't think you've got a choice. If you're in the public eye, everybody looks up to you, especially with kids with football. You are a role model and you still have to behave.
Yeah.
But
I get
in his own time, I think.
In his own time, do what he likes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, fair enough. Can we just have a look at Declan Rice?
Yes.
Because West Ham still don't want him.
Well, they do, but the problem is... It's the amount of money. It's the amount of money. You almost let yourself down there with that one.
I know. Let him go.
You've lost in the football.
90 million.
90 million. They want... I mean, the first number that they were throwing around, we want £120 million for Declan Rice. Arsenal want him. Second bid, I mean, it's just like watching Holmes under the hammer. We see the first one come in, then the second one comes in, but... You know,
just like that, yeah.
Exactly. So then there'll be another bid, and then there'll be another bid, and I'm sure they'll settle probably around the £100 million mark, but it looks like Arsenal is where he's going to go.
So there will be a bidding war.
There will be.
Rice.
Well, yeah, I don't know whether
good.
anybody else is in it, though, Ellie. I think it's probably just Arsenal that seem to be the only ones that are prepared to pay that amount of money, and they really want him. You know, it's local for Declan as well. So
there was talk of him going off to a European club, wasn't there?
That was Bayern Munich.
That's
right, yeah.
His colleague, who I can't remember right now.
Well, Jude, no. This is going to Bayern Munich, but they have pretty much ruled themselves out of that now. But you want to play in the Bundesliga? I mean,
don't know if the money's all right. Play anyway.
Well, this is what's happening with Saudi Arabia, because the amount of players there's Ruben Neves is going to Al Hilal. You've got Kalidou Koulibaly is going to Al Hilal, and N'Golo Kante is going to Al Ittihad. Hakim Ziyech is going to Al Nasir, which is a bit of a worry because obviously over in Saudi Arabia they've got football clubs. They'll just throw loads of money around and say, well, look, come and play for us. We'll pay you whatever you want. Heung-min Son of Spurs has said no. Steven Gerrard has said no. But I imagine within 5 to 10 years, if that's where the money is, who knows? That could be the biggest league, which is a bit of a worry.
Al Hilal, I'm available for you.
Are you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Centre-back, need a centre-back.
I'll
Slightly
do that.
squashy, a hard exterior.
Hard exterior, cinnamon roll on the interior.
Yes.
There you go. Coity, get off.
OK.
Thank you very much.
We love you, thank you.
Bless you.
Don't go anywhere. We've got the latest on our top story in the Titanic submarine rescue mission. We'll go through some of the details with David Mellor and Scarlett Maguire, who are looking at the papers. This is Breakfast on GB News.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
It's no, it's not 9:40. It's 6:40. That's wishful thinking, isn't it?
We'll be done at 9:40.
Let's see through the papers this morning.
And the Times shines a spotlight on Sir Keir Starmer's plans to blitz the House of Lords with new Labour peers.
Telegraph says lockdown damaged a generation of children who are now suffering from eating disorders.
The Mail focuses on the Titanic sub, saying there's 24 hours left to save them, as the US Coast Guard warns that breathable air is running out fast.
And the Eye has growing pressure on the Bank of England to increase the base rate by 0.5% tomorrow to try to tame inflation. Oh, Lord, that's the last thing we need.
Well, joining us to go through the papers in more detail this morning is former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, David Mellor, and former Labour advisor, Scarlett Maguire. Very good to see you both this morning. Thank you very much for your company.
You sound as if you believe that.
I do. You know what? I saw both your names on our little script that we get through the night before, and I thought, well, that's just marvellous. Very happy with myself.
Because I needed that.
What's she after?
Yeah, absolutely.
A peerage.
A peerage.
I think that's
nice.
become rather sullied.
That would be
but
nice.
Actually, having had an unexciting night with someone trying to break into our garage and nick my BMW, how dare they? I'm sort of half dead, so you've got to keep me going.
Well, there you go. We'll keep you awake, David.
Actually, David's BMW, it's his wife's BMW. David doesn't actually drive.
No, but I own it, and I look at it, I stroke it.
Well, you're quite
drives
right.
it.
Best thing to
I tell you what, if I was a driver, I don't just have road rage, I have passenger rage. If I was a driver, the roads would not be safe for anybody.
Oh, no.
Probably
It's like that
best
when
you're
Ellie
not.
drives, to be fair.
To be fair, I shouldn't be allowed to drive.
No.
David, let's have a look at our top story today, and it's over
Yeah.
most of the front pages, to be honest with you. This is in the front of the Daily Mail. 24 hours left to save those in that Titanic sub. Very worrying news, isn't it?
Well, first of all, it's desperately sad that people who just want to go a bit further than the rest of us are getting caught up like that. And I hope that things will come good, though the chances of it don't look very high.
No.
I think what is interesting, though, when you look at the Mail and you look at the other papers, they're pointing out what an extraordinary setup it was, where they seem to use stuff you buy from, shops that sell kit for kids to use for toy games, and that was, being used to make this thing go all the way that it went into serious harm's way. I guess if people choose to do that, it's not for us to save them from themselves. But my worry is, why were they there, actually, when it didn't seem remotely safe?
Well, because the submarine, the owner apparently refused to take it through the proper independent safety checks.
And you have to say, I wonder why that is, yeah.
Yes, $250,000 a ticket to go down and look at an old wreck. I mean...
I can see the
when you can come on GB News and look at old wrecks.
Well, look, I see the appeal of doing it, but you'd want to know you were doing it in something safe.
Yeah.
Or as safe as you could be.
Yeah, well, because it's happening in America, if it all goes wrong, which it appears, very sadly that it will, then they're going to sue for millions.
Oh, yeah.
The relatives. I mean, the whole thing is just going to go on and on and on.
Yeah.
I mean, a slight glimmer of hope today. We're hearing that they are picking up on sounds within the search area.
But then they have to get it to the surface, which takes 2.5 hours, as we all know, as we've been following this story and all the ins and outs. I mean, it's just terrible.
It's desperately sad, but, as I read what kind of machine it was and the kit and all the rest of it, I just thought, why are these people doing this? I mean, your life is too precious to risk. I mean, even if they had the best possible kit, the most safe kit, it was still a risk. But to have the kind of stuff they were using, and as you say, Scarlett, it makes it obvious why they didn't want to have it properly, safely vetted, because nobody in their right mind would safety vet it.
Well, it would seem. Look, let's move on to The Guardian, should we? They're looking at the mortgage time bomb, which they reckon is splitting the Tories, Scarlett.
Well, it is, because the Red Wall Tories believe... So we've just heard interest rates might go up another half a percent. Lots and lots of people are going to have to renegotiate their mortgages in the next few months. The people I know who've already negotiated their mortgages since the Liz Truss disaster, are paying double. And so that's happening. And the Red Wall Tories are saying, you've got to bail us out. Meanwhile, Rishi Sunak, Jeremy Hunt, the grandees are saying, oh, no, we can't possibly do that because it would lead to inflation, which means that we'd have to go on putting up interest rates. So, on the one hand, they're saying we're not going to do anything. And on the other hand, the Tory MP is saying, you have to. But what's so odd about this is that whenever these same Conservatives believe in a small state, but whenever we need anything, they go, you must bail us out. It's an incredible tension.
And there's no way, actually, of say, bail it... a bailout isn't going to work on this, is it, David?
No, it isn't.
Unstoppable.
But it's this pathetic desire to have a bailout. Your life isn't about bailouts. Life is about trying to manage a country in a way that you don't get these catastrophic collapses, which was occasioned, a lot of this, by Liz Truss and her reckless Chancellor. Let's be clear about that. I say that with great regret as someone who has had associations with the Tory party, but that's the reality of it. And what amazes me is that they think they can get away with saying that kind of stuff and the public will believe them when, the public, I suspect, just makes them even keener to get them out on their ear. This is 1997 all over again.
That's the problem, isn't it? That's the problem. The Red Wall MPs know that they've got nothing. There's been no levelling up. Brexit has not been done, and now people are going to...
they think it's only fair that Labour get a chance to make a total mess of it, and...
Well, David, we will see, won't we?
But you look at a situation like this and you say, well, actually, because people think, well, a change of government, in this case it would be to Labour, things would get better then, wouldn't it, with these... what would Labour do that could actually resolve an issue like this?
Well, there's nothing... How long have you got?
Basically, what we have to do, what this country has to have is a decent economy with plans. And whenever you talk to a Tory and you go, well, what's your industrial plan, your economic plan? There isn't one.
Labour's just shelved theirs, haven't they?
No, they haven't. What they've said, and it was their green plan, is that they want to spend $28 billion a year, but because interest rates are so high, they now can't do it in the first 2 years because actually the problem is...
So there's no way of growing the economy then?
No.
Under Labour?
No, of course there... No, that isn't about growing the economy. That is that they're not going to borrow $28 billion in the first year.
It was a green prosperity plan. It was all about economic growth.
Well, you can't... There are other ways of economic growth, and they're still going to do it, and they're going to... Keir was up in Edinburgh only yesterday, day before yesterday, on Monday, announcing what he was going to do and how we're going to sort of putting all our money into renewables. Do you know that renewables are a third the price of gas and electricity? It'll be great of, North Sea oil and all of that. Actually, it's really important that we look at how to save money as a country.
Well, maybe stuffing the House of Lords with Labour peers will sort things out, David. That's what the Times is about.
I think it's embarrassing that our constitutional arrangements can first of all be subverted by Boris Johnson putting in weird and wonderful people. I look at some of them and I think, how on earth were they even deemed fit to be on a parish council, let alone in the House of Lords? And not that the House of Lords has amounted to very much for quite a lot of years. And now Starmer, instead of saying let's clean the whole thing up, is saying he wants to bring in a lot of Labour peers as the only way of controlling the ability to get his business through. I just don't think we can go on like this. This is contemptible.
No, I don't think we can go on like this. But I mean, what we found out was that when Tony Blair got in and he wanted to reform the House of Lords by removing the hereditaries, it was an incredible fight. The hereditaries thought, well, I've been born to this, I think I should do this. And actually, the problem is the only way to reform the House of Lords is to get a Labour majority, and then you can either ditch it, and everybody, I mean, all the Labour peers are told that they're getting in on to get rid of it, and to get rid of it properly. We do need a second chamber. We just don't need a second chamber where the people in it have either been appointed because they've been nice to the Prime Minister, or they were born to it. I mean, we have to have something, but we do need something else.
But the reality is that the House of Lords, Labour has been in power and hasn't done anything about the House of Lords. But I think the House of Lords is an abomination, and most serious people don't want to go there anyway. And I think the problem is that a lot of people that are there, you know, it's 300 quid a day and all the rest of it, and you feel they're there for all the wrong reasons. And, you know, this girl of 29 who's been appointed, I'm sure there's more of a story there than we're being told, and you know, she could be there. I mean, if she lives a nice long life, and I hope she does, she could be there for sort of 60 years. What's that all about? It's absurd.
Well, and then you have Sean Bailey, who
yes,
knowingly
exactly.
broke COVID rules.
And it's an irony because, you know, Sean Bailey, I'm sure, is a nice fellow, kind to animals, helps old ladies across roads, that kind of thing. But, you know, the Tories never got behind him in his effort to be mayor. He did far better than they deserved him to do, given he was left pretty much on his own. And now he's been put in the Lords, and suddenly you discover all these things that, you know, of what I would call just non-adult behaviour.
Yeah, well, it's interesting.
Yeah, Scarlett, let's have a look at the Telegraph, shall we? And this is a really worrying story, isn't it? It's about lockdown damaging, essentially, a young generation of girls.
Absolutely. No, I think it's a really... I think that we didn't think lockdown through properly, and there's no question that the people who really, really missed out from lockdown were the young, that the schools were closed, they were kept at home. They, I mean, you know, if you were poor, that if you didn't have Wi-Fi, you were sort of completely stuck. I mean, I was somewhere at the weekend, and that my friend, the mum, had been told to isolate because she had some lung condition. When finally her daughter started going to school, she was terrified of bringing COVID back into the house, and her school friends would have nightmares that they helped kill her mother. I mean, I think there was a whole problem about not having thought through what was going on. And you're absolutely right. There's no question that in schools the results of lockdown are still going on. But
it's the fact you say, well, it wasn't properly thought through. Well, it couldn't be properly thought. I mean, it all had to happen in a hurry, didn't it? Or
No.
not at all.
So the first lockdown, you just had to do it, right? There was no question. But actually, then, you know, the Education Secretary did need to think, what am I going to do about schools? And what am I going to do about... I mean, one of the reasons... I mean, if schools were just about learning, most kids wouldn't go. I mean, you know, you go there because that's where your friends are. That's where your life is. And actually, and that's what I mean, there's no question they were missing out on learning. I mean, it's absolutely terrible, and how they catch up. But actually, they also missed out on a social life, and it's really dangerous. And so their social life is basically online. I mean, that's what's so awful about it.
Yeah, and so they are still feeling it. David, let's finish off, should we, with the British Army in the Telegraph.
Yes.
I mean, anyone who's got any connection with the Army knows the numbers are just falling and falling.
I mean, this is quite worrying because what is being said is by the number two in the British Army, number two in NATO, General Sir Tim Radford. He thinks our defence is not going to persuade a lot of our our allies that we are serious about it. And you look at the figures, I think was the army down to 76,000 now. It was, it has, the numbers have fallen dramatically. And at a certain point, I think we just have to understand, in the uncertain world in which we live, money has got to be invested in a proper army.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point, Scarlett, isn't it? Whatever you have in terms of wider views, we've got to have a suitable defence for this country, haven't we?
Yeah, I mean, what I don't understand is what the government wants to do with the army, because on the one hand, I mean, this isn't anything new. This has been going on for years and years and years. I mean, with the austerity cuts to the army, everybody said this is too much. You know, we haven't even got the kit. And on the one hand, we go, oh, we're a world-beating power, and on the other hand, we don't have anything.
No.
I mean, what is extraordinary
Just quickly, David.
Sorry, yeah, very quickly. What Tim Radford says, you know, and he's about to retire, but make him an old man. The Army currently has 76,000 serving troops, 21,000 fewer than a decade ago. This is less than a third of the total when he signed up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty horrendous, isn't it?
It is. We've got to leave it there. David, Scarlett, thank you. We'll see you a little bit later on. Inflation figures heading your way very shortly, and we'll tell you what they mean to you.
Hello, a very good morning to you. It's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Sunny start for many of us, and it's another warm one today with temperatures once again above average for the time of year. But as the temperatures rise, there will be a few more showers developing, fewer compared with recent days. Many places will escape dry. We've still got low pressure close by. We've still got this humid air coming up from the south and southwest. And there are still some showers about, mainly central and western Scotland this morning, Northern Ireland, and then developing across parts of England and into Wales as well by the afternoon. But they're not going to affect everyone. They'll be localised. Even in those areas, such as the west and the north, where we're likely to see showers, some places will avoid them and stay dry. Others will get hit by thunder, lightning and hail once again, and the risk of torrential rain and flash flooding in one or two spots. But towards the southeast, that's where it's most likely to stay dry with highs of 27 or 28 Celsius, but it's warm for all across the UK. And the showers do ease away into the evening with clear spells widely overnight. One or two mist patches forming, but otherwise it looks like it's going to be a fine night, if rather warm once again in some spots like Cardiff and London, temperatures staying at 16 or 17 Celsius, so perhaps an uncomfortable one for sleeping. I think around coastal areas, in rural spots, a bit fresher, but widely, again, tomorrow we're going to see sunny skies from the word go. This time there'll be fewer showers again, but they'll be mainly affecting East Wales into the Midlands, north of London, and then into northern England later. One or two elsewhere, but actually for much of Scotland, Northern Ireland, southern counties of England, it's largely dry with sunny spells. And it's a bit warmer in many places with that additional sunshine. Low 20s for Scotland and Northern Ireland, mid to high 20s across parts of England and Wales. Now, we're going to see those temperatures rise even further in the south on Friday and Saturday, approaching 30 Celsius in some spots, whilst further north it stays fairly changeable.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant, we're being read my superstar panel. They're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
Good morning, 7 o'clock on Wednesday the 21st of June. Today the latest inflation figures are out. We'll ask if the UK is on track for a mortgage time bomb.
Also this morning.
Search efforts have continued through last night and today. We know there's about 40 hours of breathable air. So I want to reiterate, this is a very complex search and the unified team is working around the clock.
The search for the missing Titanic tourist sub has reached a critical point as banging is heard on sonar devices and new documents show safety concerns were raised before the vessel's disappearance.
It's Prince William's 41st birthday today. We'll find out how he's going to be celebrating and why his mum inspired his latest initiative.
Plus, it's officially summer solstice today, but will there be sunshine where you are?
Weather stays changeable in the north over the next few days, but in the south, increasingly sunny skies and increasingly high temperatures. How hot will it get? I'll have the full details in the weather coming up.
Good morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Loads of you getting in touch about pet insurance this morning.
I knew this would become a chat.
It gets you going, doesn't it? I haven't got pet insurance. Wasn't an option for me. They wouldn't do it for a rescue cat. Loads of you have. Some of you have got other ideas as well. Vicky in Suffolk says, I adopted a dog from abroad who arrived in a terrible way with a tumour and skin lesions from an awful charity. He required immediate treatment. My insurance payments have gone from $80 a month to $271.
Oh, it's a lot, isn't it? Vicky, you're amazing, though, adopting from abroad. I think that's really incredible when people can do that. Liz says she doesn't have pet insurance. A few of you have actually emailed in saying this. You don't have pet insurance, but you just put away a certain amount every single month to pay for your pets when something happens. At present, Liz's King Charles Spaniel. I don't think we have a name for him here. He's got £10,000 in his account, so he's looking good. He's a clever investor, that dog, if anything were to go wrong.
Yeah. Keep your thoughts coming through. gbviews@gbnews.com. Let's bring you some breaking news this morning. We're going to have a look at some people's views in a moment. But first and foremost, I want to bring in straight away our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan, who's in the studio. Looking at inflation, Liam.
I am, Steve.
It's just dropping now.
The website has crashed. The ONS website has crashed. So I was still trying to get this number. 8.7% CPI inflation in April, of course. We're looking for a number at least below 8% at the moment, and the website is literally fallen over because so many people around the world have tried to get onto the ONS website to find out what's happening. But I'll be back with you very soon.
Right. Well, I mean, what a total nightmare. You see, that's how important it is to get our head across all this, because what it does is, of course, not only because our basic prices go up, but it also then will inform what happens with the Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee tomorrow. Interest rates, they're going to go up. They are going to go up. Will they go up by 0.5 of 1% or 0.25 of 1%, which is what we normally get?
But that, of course, will then cost more on your mortgages. We could see higher mortgage rates. And, of course, we are in the midst of a cost of living crisis that is continuing. So this is a really, really difficult time for many, many people. And that is why so many people are trying to get across these figures this morning.
Well, with the cost of living crisis continuing and, of course, those concerns over higher mortgage rates, our reporter Anna Riley has been talking to people in Hull about their day-to-day spending.
Energy, I would say definitely. It's gone up vastly compared to what I was paying, well, a year ago, really. But also food prices.
Your food bills, every time you go and shop, it's gone up. Not just 5p, it goes up 50p and more.
Just about everything what's going on, it's so dear now, I can't afford things what I used to.
So groceries, etc. have gone up by at least, 50% nearly, you know, it seems to have gone up a lot.
I can't just think of specific items, but I just know that where I used to spend about £6 at the weekend, now I'm spending 20.
So as Liam's still banging away on the laptop trying to get onto that website which has crashed, David's been in touch because all this, of course, plays into your mortgage rates as well. Any joy yet, Liam?
I have indeed.
Here we go.
And I must say, Stephen, I am shocked by this number.
Right.
So I said on GB News yesterday that inflation in April was 8.7%, and it would be bad if inflation didn't at the very least start with a 7, and it would probably be somewhere between 7 and 8%. We had some food price inflation numbers, unofficial yesterday, that were alarming. Inflation in May is unchanged at 8.7%. And this is an extremely eyebrow-raising number. British inflation had been coming down quite steadily from the peak of 11.1% back in the autumn. Rishi Sunak has staked his reputation on inflation falling to 5% by the end of the year. But the fact that inflation hasn't moved, even though inflation in the US is now down at 4%, inflation in the Eurozone is at 6.1%, the fact that UK inflation has stubbornly remained at 8.7% suggests that the Bank of England is going to come under scrutiny to take drastic action. The headline here for ordinary folk listening and watching GB News is that the cost of living crisis, as they will know, is not budging. It's stubbornly remaining. And I haven't drilled down into the sub-data. I can't yet get on the site. No wonder it's crashing. But I predict this is driven largely by food prices.
Right. So the government's going to come under a lot of pressure.
This is going to dominate politics for the next 3 to 6 months at least.
But what could the government have done? What could the government do to improve this figure?
Well, the government is going to have to hold very muscular conversations with food retailers, with other people in the supply chain. The government is also going to have to think very hard when it comes to negotiating more with the public sector unions. Of course, this will have knock-on effects. The public sector unions and indeed other private sector workers, when they talk to their employers, will say, look, we can't deal with 3 or 4% wage rises when inflation isn't coming down. It's still at 8.7%. I was seen to be among the economics commentariat at the kind of more hawkish, more concerned end of the spectrum when I was saying yesterday I think inflation is going to be around 8%. I was getting a bit of a drubbing on Twitter, but it's still at 8.7%. This is really surprising, and I don't want to be alarmist, but I do think now the UK will come to be seen as an outlier when it comes to inflation, and it's going to spark a lot of conversations about how we run our monetary policy, the Bank of England's independence, why the Bank of England was so slow to start raising interest rates, and whether or not, had they started earlier, got on top of those inflation expectations, we wouldn't have had to have interest rates so high for so long. We're going to see on the gilts market, the government bond market, yields rising, and I'm afraid mortgage rates rising. I don't like to be overly gloomy, but I've been reporting economics for 30 years, and this is, for me, a really shocking moment.
Yeah, we can see that you are really surprised by these figures.
By
I mean, that is tangible from you. I mean, I know these have literally just come through now, but what would you predict would happen now with the Bank of England interest rates decision tomorrow?
Well, at the very least, there's going to be a rise of 0.25%. So interest rates at the Bank of England will go up from 4.5 to 4.75. But there will now be incredibly fraught discussions among the 9 members of the Monetary Policy Committee, including the Bank of England Governor, Andrew Bailey, about whether or not they should go for half a percentage point, so a rise from 4.5% to 5%. This is the Bank of England's what we call the base rate. It sets the tone for all other interest rates, by definition in the economy, are above that rate. So when the Bank of England base rate goes up by 0.5%, you can expect most variable rate mortgages to go up by around 0.5% plus the mortgage company's markup. That's the way the world works. We know that, Ellie, we know that every month now, hundreds of thousands of households are moving off 5, 3 and 2 year fixed rate mortgages that by definition were deals struck between 2017 and 2021. Between 2017 and 2021, mortgage rates were 1 or 2%, right? Because base rates were 0.1, 0.5%, very, very low. So you're going to get a lot of households, a lot of young people with kids working hard, you know, 2 mum and dad working. Their mortgage rates are going to go from sort of between 1 and 3% to between, you know, 6 and 7%.
It's a huge jump.
And this is going to be a really big jump. Now, a lot of people say to me, somebody stopped me on the street outside GB News this morning, actually, and said, oh, back in my day, we had interest rates of 15%, didn't do us any harm. All these youngsters, they eat too many avocado sandwiches. They should go away to Ibiza a bit less. I'm afraid that's completely wrong, because even though interest rates are lower than they were, people who've bought houses in the last 10 years have had to buy a house at a much, much higher price as a share of their income. So they're just to buy a regular house, nothing flash, just a regular house. And so they are more indebted. And that does make today's youngsters, Stephen, again, it pains me to say they're spending more on their mortgages and on rent, and they're less likely to own their own home than any generation since the 1930s. So this is going to send housing affordability and the housing issue in general to the top of the political agenda for a long time to come.
Is this then, I know I'm being yelled at because we're out of time, but this is important. This is important. Is this thing, what impact does this then have on the housing market? Is this going to cause prices to, well, to at least stabilise or drop? OK,
I think we've already seen prices dropping on some metrics for the last few months. There's not been any sudden crash, but I know a lot of younger people in the GB News newsroom and people that email me and contact me on Twitter, they want to see a price fall because that might give them a chance of getting on the ladder and getting their own home. The fact is, Stephen, there's just such a fundamental shortage of homes in this country. We've been so bad at building homes for so many years, and there's been, you know, pressure from demography, from immigration and so on, that fundamental mismatch of supply and demand in most parts of the country, I don't think we're going to see a big fall. What we are going to see, though, and this is tough, we're going to see houses changing hands. We're going to see people who can't afford their mortgages anymore having to give up their houses, and, you know, investors or cash-rich people coming in and buying them. What I would say, just to try and put a bit of a positive note on this, the banking sector is not nearly as rickety as it was back in 2007-8. I don't think this is going to cause a sort of systemic meltdown, and that is really worth... Let's put that in the back pocket and be grateful for that. So I think that's important. What I'd also say is that there's still a sense that the housing market in general is quite stable, and I think what we're going to see is we're going to see people taking in lodgers. We're going to see the mortgage companies coming under pressure from the government now not to repossess, to give people lots of slack. We're going to see mortgage companies saying to householders whose mortgage rates are going up, look, we're not going to repossess you, but how about you switch your mortgage for now from 25 years to 35 years to try and keep your repayments down? How about you switch from a repayment mortgage to an interest-only mortgage where you don't pay down the principal, you just pay the interest? So, again, to get your monthly numbers down. Look, I do...
So they're going to come up with some options.
I do think this inflation will come down quite soon, but it's very, very surprising, and it will be noticed around the world that for now British inflation is stubbornly high, and so British interest rates are going to stay high too.
OK. Liam, for now, thanks very much indeed. Now, rescuers searching for the Titanic sub have reportedly heard banging sounds close to where the vessel went missing.
And safety fears were raised over the vessel before it went missing. That's according to new reports. Well, a massive search and rescue operation is still underway to find the submersible, which has been lost for nearly 2 days in the Atlantic Ocean with 5 people aboard.
Apparently, there's just now about 30 hours of oxygen left.
Well, earlier we spoke to the president of Lifeguard Systems, Butch Hendrick, who shared his thoughts on the underwater noises.
Certainly the banging sounds, and I believe as you just stated a few moments ago, that they were at specific intervals. There were certain sounds coming out. There was a break of a period of time, and then similar sounds coming again. That's extremely positive, and it could lead us back to one of my original theories that the submersible is entangled somewhere within the debris field of the Titanic.
Well, GB News presenter Pip Thompson is here with us now. I mean, Pip, it's very, very concerning news in the sense that the time on these oxygen tanks is obviously going down all of the time. But then we've got this glimmer of hope that we are starting to hear sounds on the sonar systems.
Yeah, Ellie, it's really feeling like make or break day, because oxygen levels, we understand, are due to run out at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. UK time, so what's that, 27 hours. Let's just remind ourselves of who is on board this vessel. There's 5 passengers. I think we can show you pictures of some of them. There's 3 Britons, Hamish Harding, adventurer and Guinness World Record holder, who is very experienced at this sort of thing. Shahzada Dawood and his son Suleiman, he is a British businessman. And then there's Paul-Henri Nargelet, he is a former French Navy diver. He's also known as Mr. Titanic because he was one of the first people to find the wreckage a number of years ago. And then Stockton Rush has been confirmed as on board. He's the chief executive of Ocean Gate, which was running this mission. Now, what we have heard in the last few hours, and this has been confirmed by the US Coast Guard, is that a Canadian aircraft detected underwater noises in the search area. So, as you say, a glimmer of hope there. ROV operations have subsequently been relocated. And ROV, if you're not sure what, I had to look it up, it's remote operating vehicles. Now, we saw it on the map just then, but the shipwreck is some 644 kilometres south of St John's in Newfoundland. There's now an underwater robot that is searching in the area of the Titanic, and this submersible is like a bus, and you can imagine how massive the North Atlantic. I mean, it really is a needle in a haystack job. There are a number of scenarios. The best one is that the submersible has risen to the surface. There is a chance of them being rescued in that case, although they are bolted. The bolts are on the outside, so it's how do you get to them? They can't free themselves. The worst scenario is that it is on the seabed and it is entangled in the Titanic wreckage. And if that's the case, it is just absolutely horrific. I mean, this submersible, it's black down there. It is tiny. Only one person can stretch their legs out at a time. It's going to be very, very cold. Claustrophobia, no doubt, will be setting in. You know, they will be having to breathe very, very slowly. Luckily, there are people on board who are very experienced at this, but the thought of it just makes you shiver, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, it's the stuff of nightmares, isn't it? It is. And I think about, you know, have they got food? Have they got water? I mean, do we know any of that detail? I suppose we don't.
Well, that hasn't been confirmed yet, I imagine, because they knew they were going to be there for a 4-day mission, so I'm sure they have got supplies.
Let's hope so. It's the stuff of nightmares, isn't it? Really, really worrying. Thank you, Pip, for bringing us up to speed with that story.
It is 7:18. Let's look at some of the other stories today. And the government's going to set out a major package of financial support for Ukraine to bolster economic stability. The funding, which includes £2.35 billion of World Bank loan guarantees, will support public services, including the cost of running schools and hospitals.
There's been a significant rise in the number of teenage girls diagnosed with eating disorders in recent years. Experts say there could be a postcode lottery of care, with those in more deprived areas unable to access the support they need.
Glastonbury opens its doors for its 51st year. Today, thousands of people will be hoping to secure a prime spot, with music kicking off on Friday, but they could have travel disruption as they make their way to Somerset because of wet weather conditions.
Now, do stay with us, because you're going to have an opinion on this one. We're asking if the era of the alpha male is long gone. Are they cinnamon rolls instead? Are men a bit soft and squidgy?
No, we're all tough.
This is Breakfast on GB News.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive, because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. The time is 7:23. We've still got lots to come on today's programme.
Yeah, today is the longest day of the year and the first day of summer. And at 7:50, we're going to transport you to Stonehenge to see how people there are celebrating the summer solstice.
And Glastonbury 2023 is officially open. At 8:20, we're going to be catching up with our Stephanie Secchi, who has all of the details of who's performing.
It's going to be, it could be a mud bath this weekend. Sort of hot
Was
mud
it rain
bath.
that's forecast?
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Oh, don't. Oh dear.
Oh dear, no. And people go down today and there's no music till Friday.
I know, they're crackers.
No.
They're all mad, as is our Steph, but she'll bring us the latest. If you want to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. GBViews at GBnews.com.
And do get in touch on this next story because I think it's going to get you talking. Men, you need to let us know, are you an alpha male or are you a cinnamon roll? And if you're a woman watching us at home or listening to us at home, do you like a cinnamon roll or an alpha male like Stephen is pretending to be right now?
I'm an alpha male.
Well, what would you identify as?
Probably a golden retriever,
Aww.
sadly. I'd like to be an alpha male, though. I'd like to be big and... I used to go to the gym and all that when I was younger. I mean, I'm nearly 50.
Oh, you look great. He looks great, doesn't he? He does look great. But yeah, you are golden retriever. You're very sweet.
I am sweet.
So
but I can be tough when I need to be.
He can be tough when he needs to be. But of course, the question is, what do you look for in a man? Is it a traditional hunk like Stephen? Or The Rock or Vin Diesel? Or do you like something a bit soft and squishier?
Well, according to a new report, daters no longer seek out the alpha male, but instead are more attracted to what they call cinnamon rolls, who are sweet and mushy on the inside. I mean, it makes me feel ill, that.
Does it? Or you like an alpha, do you?
Well,
yeah.
Anyway.
Well, relationship therapist Sally Baker believes that women want men who are emotionally intelligent, not buff.
Not buff? Well, TV personality Lizzie Cundy says she likes her men strong and tough, not soppy like a golden retriever. Lizzie, it's like you could be Sunita, so macho. It's how you want them, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I want a cinnamon roll with my cup of tea, please. That would be lovely. But not as my man. And I certainly, if you know, watching a hero on your TV screens, you want them to be tough. And being an alpha male doesn't mean you're disrespectful, or really macho. It just means that you've got a purpose, that you're strong. And I like my men to be men and make me feel like a woman. And these days, we're not allowed to know what a woman is. Keir Starmer doesn't know what one is, and it's an adult female. But, I want my men to be men, and I just think we can't change that, and that's what makes James Bond box office hit.
OK. Sally, let's start with what is a cinnamon roll. Let's get into that first. How does it differ from being an alpha male?
So a definition of a cinnamon male is a male that is kind of crusty and fruity on the outside, and mushy and soft and in touch with his feelings, his emotions on the inside. It doesn't mean he can't be buff and can't be gorgeous, because they can, but it means that they're in touch with their emotions and they are willing to support their partners with emotional intelligence as well.
OK. Lizzie, that sounds like quite a good thing.
I don't want them kind of mushy and gooey in the inside. It's not very attractive and not very sexy to me. Look, an alpha male still can be kind, still can be respectful, educated, but they've got a purpose and they're strong and they make you feel like a woman. And that's why James Bond works. That's why it's grossed $7 billion in the box office over 25 movies, because men want to be like him and, women want to be with him. And he gets the baddies and gets the girls. That's what makes him attractive.
I mean, that's part of the thing, Sally, isn't it? That it's... I mean, yes, people have to, have feelings, be in touch with their feelings to an extent, but the alpha male is a protector, isn't he? It isn't that what a lot of people look for, a protector?
I think we're more equal nowadays. Women can also stand up for themselves, and we're looking for a partner that can meet us where we're at. And we want someone who punches up and takes care of us, but also supports us in all our endeavours, our desires, our ambitions, and doesn't put us down. So women have been used to dating hunky guys, the alpha male, who is possibly a bit narcissistic and has been putting us down and not lifting us up. So we want that more. We want men that are on our side, who are supporting us.
So these hunks you're after, Lizzie, they don't lift you up. They keep you in your place.
Yeah, well, I don't really want a man, and I think a lot of women will agree with me, that will roll over and you can walk over and, you know, like a golden retriever type, tickle their tummy, and you get away with everything. That's not the sort of man you want either. No, look, we all want to be equal, but we also like to feel a bit protected. It's great to have a man that's fearless, will stick up for you and be strong. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think we're getting all muddled at the minute and confused. As I said, we can't even say what a real woman is. I know what I feel to feel like a woman, and I like a strong man. I'm sorry. I don't want a soft little puppy dog that I can walk over. And I think many other women feel the same.
Well, that's a very polarised view, though, isn't it? Because you're saying that anyone that's not macho and is weak and a walkover. I mean, no one wants that. That's not attractive to anyone. But what we want is someone who's a supporter for us.
Golden retriever type is someone that is going to be very gooey and mushy in the middle without a lot of strength.
On our side, supportive and on our side. Lots of women have been dating men, and the men like to keep them slightly anxious, slightly kind of guessing where it's all going. Whereas if you're with a golden retriever or someone who's emotionally intelligent, they'll commit. They will want you to feel confident, secure in the relationship. They're on your side. That's a big difference from dating someone who wants to keep you sort of semi-anxious.
Look, if you're with an alpha male, it doesn't mean they're not, you know, respectful, they're not kind. They're just strong. And, it's nice to feel protected and loved. And
emotional intelligence.
I love an alpha male at the minute, and I think Stephen is one. Honestly, I really do.
Well, there you go. On that note, can't argue with it, can we? We've got to leave it there. Sally, Lizzie, really good to see you both this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
And if you've got a view on that, as I'm sure you do, gbviews@gbnews.com.
Yeah. We were just thinking before that we went into that debate, who would be a cinnamon roll, who would be a golden retriever? And we were talking about Justin Bieber or Jack Grealish, so kind of the softy types. Let us know what you think. Yeah, Jack Grealish's got lovely picture there. Might disagree
with that.
Yeah, whereas someone like James Bond would be the alpha male, wouldn't it?
Or The Rock, or Vin Diesel.
Someone like that. But I don't know if I necessarily agree that... Yeah, because, I mean, like The Rock, for example, he looks like an alpha male, but he's actually really soft and lovely on the inside. So I think you can actually be a hybrid. Maybe that's what we need, a hybrid.
Yeah, maybe.
That's the end of the debate.
Well, let's know what you think. Now, David Mellor and Scarlett Maguire are going to be having their say on the latest inflation figures, which are shockingly unchanged. Bad news for the economy, 8.7%. We'll bring you more analysis very shortly. This is Breakfast on GB News.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now? Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
7:35, time to have a look at the papers now. The Times shines a spotlight on Sir Keir Starmer's plans to apparently blitz the House of Lords with new Labour peers. No surprise, I guess.
The Telegraph says lockdown damaged a generation of children who are now suffering from eating disorders.
For the Mail, looking at the Titanic sub, 24 hours, it says, to save them, as a US Coast Guard warns that air is running out.
And the Eye leads on growing pressure on the Bank of England to increase the base rate by 0.5% to tame UK inflation.
Yeah, and that's something which, look, I'd be really surprised if it wasn't half a percentage point up to 5% tomorrow, the base rate, because of those inflation figures today, 8.7%. Unchanged from last month when it should have fallen below 8 or just under 8%. It's really concerning, and we'll get more from Liam Halligan, economics editor, at the top of the next hour. In the meantime, let's talk to former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, David Mellor, and former Labour advisor, Scarlett Maguire. Good to see you both this morning. David, I want to just spin this around a bit and look at the Guardian's looking at inflation,
yes.
And your reaction as well to what we've seen this morning.
Well, I'm just reading. Sorry, I'm holding my mobile phone, not because I'm having an exciting chat, more exciting than this one, but this is only online. But they ask the question: why is inflation in the UK worse than in other major economies? 2 answers that immediately apply. One is that the UK imports more than 50% of its food, so is very caught up in imported inflation on foodstuff, particularly from the EU. And the other thing is, of course, there's a jobs market in the UK, which, to quote The Guardian, says the jobs market in the UK is struggling to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic, Brexit visa rules, and a decision by many older workers to quit the employment scene. In other words, a lot more money is having to be paid to retain people that you wouldn't necessarily expect to have to do at this stage in the cycle. I think this is quite worrying because, 8.7%, it's a frightening figure.
Mm.
And, when you think for a whole lot of the time, in the last decade, 15 years, it's been nothing inflation, and suddenly it shoots up.
How then, if the Guardian is right and is saying, food inflation, which we know is one of the key drivers of this, is down to our huge number of imports, how do we then develop, with any speed at all, food security in the UK?
Well, I mean, that has never been, unfortunately, a priority with us. Mm. And, people are actually being paid to leave land to lay idle, which is not sensible.
Scarlett, what do you make of it?
I think, it's interesting that we all talk about mortgage rates, but actually, for most people, for everybody, the food inflation is terrifying.
Yeah.
and that you know, we already know that there's a crisis for many people with gas and electricity, but then the food, which everybody needs, and you know that it's the poorest people where food inflation is actually higher. And what's so scary is that in America it's half. In Europe, it's, you know, we're at 8.7, they're at about 6. And actually, we do need to ask the question is, what are we doing wrong to have this high inflation? And also, I mean, how are people going to deal with it? And then we have the ridiculous thing is that if you're a public sector person, your pay rise is going to be about, 3 or 4% if you're lucky. So you're going to go on losing money when we know. And the working poor are the people who are going to food banks and are on tax credits. I mean, it is really, really frightening, particularly, I mean, for people trying to keep children, to bring up children, just awful.
David, you might be able to answer this, because I've yet to get an answer, actually, from anyone that I understand, is that you have some economic experts saying, because we are looking at food inflation, we have to buy food, we're looking at fuel inflation and we have to buy fuel, actually increasing interest rates doesn't do anything because it isn't actually reducing our spending.
Well, it's a somewhat crude mechanism, isn't it? But it's what they always do. I mean, ever since I was involved in politics for 40 years, the crude mechanism says that if you have troublesome inflation, then you damp down by raising interest rates. I mean, the idea is that it keeps the economy, it calms the economy down, and it prevents people adding to the fundamental inflation with lots of other, there are lots of drivers to inflation, and keeping interest rates high supposedly deals with that. But of course, its negative impact on other things, the job market and so on, is quite troubling.
What would you? I mean, if you were advising now, if you were still chief secretary, what would you be saying about interest? Would you want to see interest rates still going? Would you still use that very blunt mechanism?
Well, in the way it would work, if I was still chief secretary, what I would be on is the increase in public expenditure, which is outrageous. And if you increase public expenditure, of course, what you do is add to inflation because prices go up, and public expenditure is about too much money circulating and being spent not always on the wisest possible things. It would be up to the Chancellor to take the big calls. And, they're doing their best. As my mother would say, you're doing your best, don't worry, you're doing your best. But, when you think that Rishi Sunak has very little experience, though he's well qualified economically, Jeremy Hunt was very effective, and I felt very sorry for him when he was Health Secretary, because it was a devil of a job, and he held it for years and years and years. Never once had any job engaged in Treasury matters, and yet these two are responsible for running the British economy. And I might not say amateur's night, but there's an element you feel that the most they're going to be doing is listening to their civil servants. I always took the view in my 11 years as minister, civil servants should be treated with respect. And in fact, I was none of these rows in those days. Civil servants were always the ones I worked with. We got on very well. But you cannot allow the civil servants to turn to Chapter 9 in their basic manual and do what it says in Chapter 9. You've got to try and liven things up by having some fresh ideas. No evidence they've got too many fresh ideas, sadly.
Well, it is very troubling, isn't it? We'll have Liam Halligan in the studio with us in a little while just to take us through that figure remaining stubbornly high at 8.7%. Obviously, talk now of what's going to happen with the Bank of England decision tomorrow. We'll obviously talk about that with Liam Halligan, but it is very troubling. Scarlett, let's look at another story, shall we, in The Guardian, and this is Andrew Tate has now been charged and is facing trial in Romania.
So Andrew Tate is frankly a man who hates women. He he's been charged with a whole list of things. This is a man who's got something like 6.7 million followers on Twitter. He puts out videos sort of encouraging young men, particularly aimed at young men in schools, teenagers and in their 20s, about how to treat women, which you and I would say is just badly. So, and very, very influential in schools. I mean, a lot of women teachers, you know, because of him, the boys say, why should we listen to you? You're only a woman. He moved to Romania because he said it was a much better place for sort of where they didn't take sex crimes very seriously. And the Romanian police have arrested him and charged him with trafficking, rape, and they're looking at other things. I mean, he and his brother, who have both been charged, quite awful. I mean, luring women in by pretending they love them, all of that horrible stuff. I mean, it is absolutely ghastly. And the fact that this man has, I mean, you know, while I don't like to give him publicity, I mean, I think we have to say what he is. I mean, you know, he is the opposite of wokeness, right? This is a man who actually does believe that, you know, women should not be allowed to go out without their men. He basically keeps them in the kitchen. And thank goodness that the Romanian authorities have done something. And I know that obviously everybody is innocent until they're found guilty, but because it's abroad, we can talk about it.
OK. David, oh no, we won't do that one because it's another Guardian story. We won't do that one. Let's do the Times. Should be page 9. Cars stolen from suburbs are being sent abroad, even before the owners have woken up, which nearly happened with you and your wife's car last night.
Well, it actually did, because we were woken up at 1:30. Fortunately, we have a very good security team around where we live, and someone had got into the garage and was trying to make off with my BMW. I mean, I own the car, she drives it. So it's the best way to do
Quite
this
right.
thing. But actually, it shows that nowadays people are not interested in most things that you own, which is A, a good thing, but B, a bad thing if they're interested in nicking your car. And a lot of people make it easy for their cars to be nicked by leaving out their automatic locking device. Whereas you should stick it in. There's some sort of chain mail.
Well, a lot of people are keeping them in the fridge and things.
And that actually was what saved our car, because while he was groping around trying to activate the vehicle, one of our more alert security people noticed this, and that was it. But what worries me is the way in which, look, it's quite serious if you lose your car.
Oh, yeah.
Stolen in this way. But you think, do people have any confidence in the police? You see, I don't know whether our security team will report it to the police. But to be honest with you, I wouldn't bother, because what's the point? It just rubs salt in the wound even more, you know?
Yeah, there's little they can do, unfortunately.
But this story, which
I was going to say, the story is actually even more frightening, because it is about how by the time you wake up, your car has already been taken abroad.
Yes.
And so, actually, to be fair on the police for once, there is nothing they can do, because it'll have gone by the time.
But it's such a sophisticated network at this stage, isn't it? I mean, they literally steal cars and they're off overnight.
Yeah, you see, what they say here, there's a gang that have been arrested, well, good, stealing 17 vehicles in May in affluent areas like Weybridge. They started the cars with relay boxes, one by the car, another close to the front door of the owner's home, near where a car's key fob is kept, and that's where they're able to do it. You'd think it's safe if your car key fob is in the house. It isn't, if they can still get a signal into it. And the gang are suspected of immediately switching number plates, moving the cars across the channel, sometimes intact, and sometimes in parts. So you wake up in the morning and your car has already disappeared.
The good old-fashioned criminal who you'd catch and they say, it's a fair cop, Gov. You know, it's so...
They're all in breakfast television now.
Ah, I can be it, yeah.
Yes,
It's all this sort of big organised crime, isn't it? We all need a bit of cash in our pockets, it would seem. Well, we know we do at the minute. Charles and Camilla, the King and Queen, did all right yesterday. They got a winner.
Well, they got a winner. Actually, it's a shame we don't have the pictures of Charles and Camilla sort of gripped. I mean,
I've got it here.
Most
I'll hold
people,
it up.
yes, do show it, Ellie. It's great. Because most people, I mean, obviously they go to Ascot and they look at the horses, as Eamonn and Isabel are going today. But actually, of course, for Charles and Camilla and other multimillionaires like them, it's a matter of watching their own horses win. So it's not that they've got £5 on a bet, it's whether their own horses win. The big question in racing is actually what Charles is going to do with the horses, because he's not like his mother. I mean, genuinely, Queen Elizabeth absolutely loved horses, probably rather more than most people, whereas Charles isn't.
In the meanwhile, am I permitted to say, and it's not because no one thought to invite me, it's not me being sour, but I have been to Ascot on quite a lot of occasions. I can't think of a more tedious day out.
Don't say that, David. It's the best day out.
No. That's because you can prance around looking glamorous. I just slide around in an ill-fitting...
No, it's so much fun.
I agree with you, David. I've been to Ascot a few times and got invited to, you know, I was always in a box somewhere and all that, and I found it very dull.
And all they do is drinking away. I mean, I'm not against drinking, but why do I have to flog all the way down to Ascot
to do it? Yeah.
Oh, no, it's great fun. Or you're being very grumpy.
No.
You were in a box. You've got no excuse. You should have had a fabulous time.
Yes, where the drink flowed
alpha
for
males
free.
get worried about.
You get
alpha males get bothered about that kind of thing.
Yes, well, this is true. We do.
And you girls go around looking glamorous, while us alpha males are ignored. That's not good.
No, I quite agree, David.
No, it's great fun. It's great fun. And day 2 today, so we're going to have that with Paul Hawkins a little bit later on. But Scarlett, David, thank you very much. That is time, I'm afraid. But you're back with us, aren't you, in the next hour? Thank you.
Now, it is 10 to 8. Let's bring you up to date with today's other stories.
And banging sounds have been heard in the search for the missing submersible tourist vessel that went missing en route to the Titanic shipwreck in the Atlantic. That's according to US media. 5 people in total are missing. They have under 40 hours of oxygen left. British-Pakistani businessman Shahdaza Dawood and his son Solomon are on board, along with British billionaire explorer Hamish Harding.
UK inflation rate figures have just come out. They're unchanged at 8.7%. That's according to the Office for National Statistics. Economists had predicted that it would have dropped to about 8.4% last month, if not lower. The Chancellor said the government will continue to support the Bank of England as it tries to squeeze inflation out of our economy, and that means, frankly, squeezing us.
Now, the UK could experience more than 16 hours of daylight today as we celebrate the longest day of the year.
Yeah, so as you would expect for the summer solstice, thousands of revellers will gather at Stonehenge, or have gathered, I should say, to see the sun rise at the beginning of the summer solstice and mark the return of brighter evenings.
Well, our South West reporter Jeff Moody joins us live from Stonehenge now. Good morning to you, Jeff. It looks wonderful behind you, very, very bright, and I believe you've been there since about 2:30 a.m. this morning.
Yes, I have. It's the summer solstice. It's Stonehenge, which means only one thing. I haven't had much sleep. But it's been worth it because thousands of other people haven't had much sleep either. We've all been here all night waiting for that glorious moment that came at, I think it was 4:52 when the sun came up over the Hillstone and then went straight into the middle of the circle, and there were huge cheers. People have been praying all morning and they're now partying for the rest of the morning. Praying and partying. That's what you need to do before 8 o'clock in the morning. Scott, you have a very, very grand title, Head of Stonehenge. I love that title. How's it gone? How many people have we seen here today?
So good morning, and yes, you're right, very much a grand title. Sometimes I have to pinch myself to remind myself of that. So celebration of the summer solstice. You can hear it and see it in the background. We had about 8,000 people attending from the late hours of last night, from the sunset all the way through to the sunrise this
Some
morning.
people come to see the sunset first of all, and then they stay all night in time for the sunrise, don't they?
Yeah, very much so. They, like you just said, they will come for sunset all the way through to sunrise. Some will come for sunset, go home, get the well-needed rest that we haven't had, and then they will come back in the morning to join in the celebrations that you can see going on behind us.
It seems there were more people here than last year, is that right?
Yeah, so it's gradually increasing each year as we move on to each summer solstice. But what is great to see that we're seeing more of now is a lot more families with younger children coming, especially, you know, pick them up from school, bring them to celebrate the sunset, get them home, tuck them up, and we're actually seeing some of them come back in the morning for some breakfast and some, you know, the fantastic sunrise that we saw this morning.
Now, briefly, if you will, normally, of course, you can't go in amongst the stones. This is a very privileged position that we are in. There are people running across the stones, hugging the stones, doing all sorts of things to the stones, if I'm honest. Is that a difficult thing to manage for you guys?
I wouldn't say it's difficult. As you mentioned, very privileged to be stood here where we are now and with the group behind us. So we actually do that 4 times a year. That's for both winter and summer solstice, and then for the autumn and spring equinox. We ask people, you can see from my badge, to respect the stones, and we have a lot of stewards, volunteers, staff members who will roam the area and ask people to be mindful of the actions that they are taking place. And then we have a stringent process after the area is cleared with our head curators who will come and check the stones after that.
Brilliant. Scott, thank you very much. Well, I'm going to go and have some pizza and a coffee and a sleep. Back to you.
Yeah, go and hug a stone, Jeff. Thanks very much indeed. All the top stories heading your way very shortly. Latest on Titanic and inflation after the weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. It's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Sunny start for many of us, and it's another warm one today with temperatures once again above average for the time of year. But as the temperatures rise, there will be a few more showers developing, fewer compared with recent days. Many places will escape dry. We've still got low pressure close by. We've still got this humid air coming up from the south and southwest. And there are still some showers about, mainly central and western Scotland this morning, Northern Ireland, and then developing across parts of England and into Wales as well by the afternoon. But they're not going to affect everyone. They'll be localised. Even in those areas, such as the west and the north, where we're likely to see showers, some places will avoid them and stay dry. Others will get hit by thunder, lightning and hail once again, and the risk of torrential rain and flash flooding in 1 or 2 spots. But towards the southeast, that's where it's most likely to stay dry with highs of 27 or 28 Celsius. But it's warm for all across the UK. And the showers do ease away into the evening with clear spells widely overnight. 1 or 2 mist patches forming. But otherwise, it looks like it's going to be a fine night, if rather warm once again in some spots like Cardiff and London, temperatures staying at 16 or 17 Celsius. So perhaps an uncomfortable one for sleeping. I think around coastal areas, in rural spots, a bit fresher. But widely, again, tomorrow we're going to see sunny skies from the word go. This time there'll be fewer showers again, but they'll be mainly affecting East Wales into the Midlands, north of London, and then into northern England later. 1 or 2 elsewhere, but actually for much of Scotland, Northern Ireland, southern counties of England, it's largely dry with sunny spells. And it's a bit warmer in many places with that additional sunshine. Low 20s for Scotland and Northern Ireland, mid to high 20s across parts of England and Wales. Now we're going to see those temperatures rise even further in the south on Friday and Saturday, approaching 30 Celsius in some spots, whilst further north it stays fairly changeable.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It's 8 o'clock on Wednesday, the 21st of June. Today, the inflation rate has just come out this morning, unchanged at 8.7%. It's a shocker. We'll ask if the UK is now on track for a mortgage time bomb.
The UK is now the inflation nation. The consumer price index in May staying at 8.7% up. No change from April. The Bank of England's under pressure. There will be interest rate rises tomorrow. More mortgage pain for young families. But good news, if you're a saver, I'll be bringing you the latest on GB News.
Also this morning.
Search efforts have continued through last night and today. We know there's about 40 hours of breathable air. So I want to reiterate, this is a very complex search, and the unified team is working around the clock.
The search for the missing Titanic tourist sub has reached a critical point as banging is picked up by sonar devices, and new documents show safety concerns were raised before the vessel's disappearance.
It's a very happy birthday to Prince William today, turning 41. We're going to find out how he's celebrating and how his mother inspired his latest initiative.
Plus, it's officially summer solstice today, but will there be sunshine where you are?
Weather stays changeable in the north over the next few days, but in the south, increasingly sunny skies and increasingly high temperatures. How hot will it get? I'll have the full details in the weather coming up.
Good morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
So let's kick off with that breaking news this morning, and the latest figures from the Office for National Statistics have been released, and they show that the UK inflation rate is unchanged at 8.7%.
Well, our economics and business editor Liam Halligan joins us now. Good morning to you, Liam. And when this broke at 7 a.m, you were shocked.
I was ashen-faced.
Yeah, you were.
So I've been covering economics and business on television and in newspapers for the thick end of 30 years. And I am really surprised at this, more so than I think than any piece of data that I've ever seen published. Look, this isn't a 2008 financial crisis. The banks are much more stable than they were back then. I also don't think there's going to be a big house price crash, which many youngsters won't want to hear. They want prices to fall, but many homeowners may be relieved by that. Why? Because there's a fundamental shortage in this country of homes, and I think that will keep prices relatively firm. But for young households coming off fixed-rate mortgages that deals they struck 5, 3 or 2 years ago when interest rates were ultra low, they're now going to be facing increases in their interest rates from like 1 or 2 or 3% up to 6, 7 and even 8% in the weeks and months to come. Why? Because these price pressures are persisting, largely because of food prices. The food price inflation number is still above 18%. Unbelievable. Because inflation in the UK seems to be particularly high, 8.7% compared to just 6.1% in the Eurozone, 4% in the US. That's going to force the Bank of England to keep raising interest rates. Now, some of those interest rates may be passed on to savers. The banks take their time to pass them on, don't they? But they will immediately be passed on in mortgage markets. If you've got a fixed-rate mortgage, you're fine. No one's going to take your mortgage away from you when you hear about banks withdrawing mortgages. What that means is that banks reprice the deals that they're offering to remortgagers and new mortgage holders. And those repriced rates will now be higher as a result of this inflation number.
Well, I mean, when you talk about the lower rates in parts of Europe and in the United States, I mean, is food security, the fact we're importing a lot of food, really the driver behind that much of a difference?
You've put your finger on it, Stephen. Of all the numbers within this headline 8.7% inflation number, the food price number is the most shocking. Food price inflation was 19.1% in April. That means a basket of food was 19.1% more expensive in April 2023 than April 2022, but down to just 18.4% in May, so hardly fallen at all. And the UK is one of the biggest importers of food in the world. It's not that we're only country with food price inflation. It's still high in Germany and indeed in many parts of the Eurozone. But I think what's clear here is the Bank of England's dilemma. Why don't they just not raise interest rates? I've been arguing that for quite a few weeks now. Well, the problem they've got, if they don't raise interest rates, particularly when inflation isn't budging, then the financial markets will sell sterling. What does that mean? The pound will fall. And when the pound falls, that makes our imports and our imported food more expensive. And we are highly reliant on imported food. And it does make us vulnerable to those exchange rate falls.
But hold on a minute. If the whole point of raising the interest rate is to curb spending, right, to bring inflation down, if they didn't put interest rates up, so our mortgages were staying as they were, but some other costs went up as a result of that, wouldn't that still curb our spending without our mortgages being
No one
hit?
ever said economics was easy. There are all sorts of dilemmas and trade-offs. My case for holding interest rates now, look, the Bank of England aren't going to do it, but my case for doing it, if I was on the Monetary Policy Committee, would be this. The Bank of England's already done 12 interest rate rises in a row. Economic theory and history suggests interest rate rises tend to take 12 to 18 months to feed through. So there's an awful lot of interest rate rises already in the tank. I would be waiting and seeing. That's now impossible because the Bank of England, to be honest, has made a mess of its communication strategy. For too many months in 2021, it was saying, don't worry about inflation, it won't go up. If it does, it will be transitory. They didn't raise rates earlier. Had they done that, we wouldn't be in this mess. So, look, it's a very, very difficult situation. I think the government's going to have to make some kind of statement. I don't think there'll be some over-mortgage support package, but I do think the government will be considering, and here's a throwback to the 80s, reinstating what we call mortgage interest rate relief at source, or MIRAS, not for buy-to-let investors, but for homeowners on their principal residence to try and ease those costs. I also think the mortgage companies will be offering people routinely to extend their mortgage term and move from repayment to interest rate-only mortgages with no charge in order to try and keep those monthly repayments manageable. No one wants to see home repossessions, least of all government ministers, and least of all the mortgage companies in these days of social media. Home repossessions would not go down well.
No,
Wouldn't
it
be a good
certainly
look,
wouldn't.
would it?
OK, Liam, for now, thank you. We're going to check up with you throughout the course of the show, of course.
But that
it's a huge story.
Yeah, and that is really good advice as well. I mean, if you are now struggling with your mortgage, talk to your mortgage lender, talk to your banks, because there are options out there. If it just means extending your term or perhaps going to interest only, there are options for you.
Still got to find the capital. Interest only worries me because you've still got to find the capital at the end of it.
True.
That's the problem. Anyway, let's head to Huddersfield. Anna Riley's there for us this morning. I mean, they're disturbing figures, Anna, aren't they, for people who are already struggling?
Good morning, Stephen and Ellie. Yes, they certainly are. I'm here at Cottage Foods. It's a delivered ingredients food wholesaler, and they supply mainly to restaurants, to chefs and to pubs as well. And I'm joined by Alistair Cullen. He's the managing director. That figure, Alistair, that 8.7% inflation staying the same, what does that mean for you?
It's a bit disappointing, to be brutally honest. We've seen some massive increases over the last 2 years in terms of ingredients, which we've had to pass on to some of our customers and equally hold ourselves. We were hoping to see a bit more in terms of decrease this time round. I'm glad it's not gone up, but food prices are certainly here to stay in terms of high.
Yeah, and food inflation and food costs are driving that inflation figure. How have you seen food prices increase that you're supplying?
Oh, massively. So things like oil, for example, is up 40% in the last 2 years. Butter, dairy's up another 30%. It's been really difficult. Us trying to manage our range and where we're supplying from. We supply some major restaurants and pubs locally, and making sure that they get quality along with price so they can manage that for their customers is paramount to us.
Yeah, and in terms of, you'll have a gauge on the hospitality industry, won't you, working with chefs and supplying to chefs every day. What are they saying?
It's been difficult. It's been difficult for them to manage customers and stay competitive within that market. Obviously, your consumers' pounds, are tight for them at the moment, so where they spend it is quite key. Also, ensuring they're still supplying a quality product at price is important, but it's been difficult. Finding the right staff is challenging because people are looking for more money, and we're definitely feeling that at the moment.
Yeah, and how are you coping? Because you can only pass so much on price-wise to your customers, can't you, before they'll say, sorry, that's too much money?
Absolutely. So we've looked for different alternatives in terms of supply without compromising on quality. We're fortunate that we do some specialist products that we import from Japan, which interestingly have only had a couple of % increases over the last 2 years versus UK-based products, which I think speaks volumes as to how we're handling as a country. But yeah, it's been interesting trying to find different supply routes, and also we've made cuts here. We're doing more with less staff to ensure that we can afford to pay everything we need to pay.
Thank you, Alistair. Thank you for speaking to us this morning. So, yeah, that's the view here from Cottage Food in Huddersfield on those inflation figures that have come out today.
Lovely stuff, Anna, thanks. Philip says, my shopping habits have had to change dramatically. No popular brands, mostly generic or home brands. I think a lot of people are doing that.
Yeah.
A lot of people are. I mean, I tell you what.
You've changed your shop, yeah.
I do it. I check every price on the shelf now because it's like, some of it's just so ridiculous.
I know. Yeah. I mean, you will notice, won't you, even nipping into the shops for a few items. I shocked myself the other day. I didn't do what you just did, which I do need to be better at doing. Didn't check the prices. Just picked up a basket of food. Nothing particularly luxurious in there. It was £60. £60, and I couldn't tell you what I got.
Ridiculous.
Nothing. I mean, so people are noticing even in their shopping baskets, it's a lot of money now. Michael says, I am partial to a soup sold by Asda, their own brand. Since Christmas, Asda have increased the price from 50p to 75p per tin. The main ingredient is water.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Stephen took out an endowment mortgage over 30 years. He said, I don't know if you really get endowments now, do you? They probably still exist somewhere. He said, I had to remortgage as I couldn't pay it off, and when the interest rate increased, I struggled again with the repayments. It took me 42 years to pay it off. That's stuff. It's not all... I mean, the issue with interest rates going up, of course, is it negatively affects a lot of people, but it does benefit some people, and you can't forget, I mean, people in retirement, of course, you do need a certain level of interest. Roger says all those people who've been frugal with their money over the years are at last getting a decent savings rate. which we've forgotten about, or a lot of us forget about, but that's really important. Keep your thoughts coming through. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Now, researchers searching for the Titanic submarine that's been reportedly heard banging sounds near to where that vessel went missing. And safety fears were raised over the vessel before it went missing. That's according to new reports.
Well, of course, a massive search and rescue operation is still underway to try to find the submersible. It's been lost now for 2 days in the Atlantic with 5 people on board.
Well, according to authorities, there's around 30 hours of oxygen left.
Well, earlier we spoke to the president of Lifeguard Systems, Butch Hendrick, who shared his thoughts on these new underwater noises.
Certainly the banging sounds that I believe, as you just stated a few moments ago, that they were at specific intervals. There were certain sounds coming out. There was a break of a period of time, and then similar sounds coming again. That's extremely positive, and it could lead us back to one of my original theories that the submersible is entangled somewhere within the debris field of the Titanic.
Well, GB News presenter Pip Thompson is here with us now. Pip, we're now at a critical point, aren't we, in this search and rescue mission?
Yeah, it is looking like make or break day, really, because we understand those oxygen levels will only last until 10 o'clock tomorrow our time. So that's what now, just over 24 hours. And that gentleman there was just talking about the sub being entangled in the wreckage of the Titanic. Just to give you an idea of how deep that is, we think that's about the height of like 9 Empire State Buildings. That's how deep it is. So even if they locate it, they've got to get them out. It is so complex, so intricate. The main hope is that this sub has surfaced. And although they've got to free them, at least there's a better chance, because to get down that deep is almost unheard of. It's very, very difficult.
I mean, this is the thing, isn't it, which makes it difficult, is if it is on the bottom, which is likely, then even if they find them, locate them, all the rest of it, the possibility of getting them up and out in time, it seems almost impossible.
Such a small window, and we just must remind ourselves of those people on board. There are 3 Britons: Hamish Harding, an adventurer, very experienced. He's a Guinness World Record holder, and then also businessman Shahzada Dawood and his 19-year-old son Suleiman. We don't think they've done anything like this before, and in these situations, if they are still alive, which hopefully they are, I mean, staying calm will be imperative. At least there are people there who are experienced who can help them, because it will be, if they are at the bottom, it will be very cold, it will be dark. It is a tiny little space.
You can only imagine what they're thinking and how they're feeling. I mean, especially that 19-year-old boy.
I can't imagine it, Ellie, to be honest.
Just gone on a trip with his dad. I mean, it is the stuff of nightmares.
And you know, we were talking earlier about supplies. Well, actually, I was looking into this again, and the last known sighting, I think we do have a photograph of this, the last known sighting of the sub was on Sunday. It was a 4-day trip, but the actual descent to see the wreckage of the Titanic, it was 2 hours down, a few hours exploring the wreckage, 2 hours up. So there wouldn't have been any supplies. The supply they've got is oxygen, and that is fast running out.
And if they've lost power, which is a possibility, though we don't know, but it's certainly a possibility, that means no heating down there as well, and it will be freezing. I mean, there's a danger of freezing to death.
3 Celsius they were talking about, if not lower.
I mean, you can't cope at those in those temperatures very long.
And in the last few hours, we've also been hearing about an individual who raised concerns about the safety of this submersible, and it doesn't sound like he was listened to. We haven't had a comment from OceanGate, the company involved, on that yet. But it does sound like there were red flags raised 3 or 4 years ago about this.
Horrific stuff. Pip, for now, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you. Now, the time is 17 minutes past 8. Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
And the government's going to set out a major package of financial support for Ukraine to bolster their economic stability. The funding includes $2.35 billion of World Bank loan guarantees, and that should support vital public services, including schools and hospitals.
There's been a significant rise in the number of teenage girls diagnosed with eating disorders in recent years. Experts say there could be a postcode lottery of care, with those in more deprived areas unable to access the support that they need.
And pet insurance payouts reached a record high last year, more than $1 billion in claims. That's up 28%, according to the Association of British Insurers. Now, how do you like your men?
Oh.
How do you like your men? So macho or a cinnamon roll, as they're known, soft and squidgy and sweet. Julie says, I just want a man to be kind and honest, be himself and feel comfortable with who he is, nothing to prove. Big personality overrules big muscles.
Oh, that's nice. You just want someone who's kind and honest. It's more of a cinnamon roll, perhaps.
Yeah, it's a cinnamon roll.
Yes, John says, I am an alpha. I'm a full-on ex-rugby player and I open doors for women.
And Terence says, most young men these days can't even wire a 3-pin plug, never mind explain how their car engine works.
Well, I think that's actually quite true.
That is actually quite true.
No, I don't know any young man who knows practical things like that.
Oh, useless.
Yeah.
Tom Harwood's here. You're a young man. Can you rewire a plug?
Well, here's the thing. The internal combustion engine is being banned in this country by 2030, so I don't think anyone will really need to know about it.
Oh, that's
the answer, is it, Tom?
That's
the
a
pace
poor
of
get
change
out
marches
clause.
on.
That's a poor get-out clause. Can you do a plug?
I have done a plug in the past. I think if I put my mind to it, I could. You just need to remember which one's the earth wire. That's all you need to do.
Yeah.
And make sure it has that little loop, so it's loose, so if the thing gets tugged, then the earth wire is still connected to the pin. That's what I remember from my Boy Scouting days.
Well, there you go.
Oh, well done. Well, you've got knowledge there, Tom.
Yes.
Very good.
Yes, well, that's very good. Tom is here, as you can see, but talking about COVID, actually. Lockdowns damaged a generation of young people, so we're being told now.
Well, do you know what? The COVID inquiry continues today, and you've been talking with Liam Halligan all morning about inflation, and you might think that the Chancellor would have a pretty busy day today dealing with that rather large issue before the Bank of England, before the Treasury. Instead, Chancellor Jeremy Hunt is actually going to be spending quite a considerable amount of time talking to the COVID inquiry about his former job as chair of the Health Select Committee and indeed his time as Health Secretary under previous governments, which is a curious timing, one might have thought, for a day that the Chancellor might need to be having some fairly serious discussions about the state of the economy.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of the economy, actually, in some respects, it's not that urgent, is it, today? Because the plans that they're going to have to come up with to tackle this are actually mid to long term, aren't they? Well, it's things like food security for a kick-off.
Well, any rate rise is something that usually takes up to a year to actually have any impact in the economy. What we're seeing now with our rate of inflation could well be a result of decisions the Bank of England took over a year ago. Similarly, any sort of issue where the government needs to sort of boost supply in order to meet those demands in the economy that are clearly driving inflation, that takes time. That takes a long time to embed. Ultimately, we're going to hear a lot of words today, but it will be interesting what the Labour Party say at Prime Minister's questions, because they've put out some sort of real-world examples of what this sort of inflation means this morning. They're saying that an average basket of food, an average food shop, the amount of money a family will spend on food over a year is £1,000 more this year than it was in 2020, 2021. That's something really tangible that will no doubt have an electoral impact, will no doubt sort of be at the forefront of people's minds. And often people say when there are damaging stories for the government, well, something else will come along and it'll move it off the news agenda. When it's an economic story, another story coming along doesn't move it off the agenda. This is people's lives. This is how people experience every day.
The problem is that we've heard for a long time there's been, and it's a fair point in many respects, saying, well, this isn't just a British problem, this is a global problem with the economy. and that is a fair point. The problem you've got now is that you look at other major economies and they're tackling inflation in a much better way than we are.
The United Kingdom is starting to look like an outlier. The highest inflation in the G7. Only Italy comes close, and Italy is not a sort of economic model that anyone really wants to be mirroring. And it does seem that this has taken people by surprise. It's taken many economists by surprise. It's certainly taken some within government by surprise. And it does yet again feed into this sense that things in Britain seem broken. And that is a damaging sort of backdrop for what will be a very challenging political year. There's all this speculation about when might the next general election be. Could there be an earlier than expected one next May? Might there be a sort of growth-boosting, tax-cutting budget in the new year, followed by a quick election? I think that prospect is now looking more and more distant. This Parliament will likely go on further as this news, as what the government hopes for, better economic news, seems more and more distant.
OK, Tom Howard, really good to see you this morning. Thank you very, very much.
Don't go anywhere, because we're going to tell you why a lack of female performers is causing controversy at Glastonbury. Stephanie Tecci will have all the details for us.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in their home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christys, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know,
All
Kate
sorts
Moss?
of Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. The time is 8:27. Still lots to come on this morning's
Could
programme.
you get any closer?
I know, it's because I've missed you. Look.
I've missed you too, Dom.
I'll go over here. I'll be independent.
It's nice. Isn't it nice when you just get on?
Yeah, it is nice. We're going to go for coffee after the show. We've just decided, because we've missed each other, haven't we?
We have.
So we'll go have a nice catch-up.
Yeah, it's been lovely.
Yeah, it's been nice.
Now, Prince William, maybe we'll raise a cup to Prince William, because he turns 41 today. But that's not all he's got to celebrate. At 8:45, we'll find out about the brand new initiative he's launching as well.
And at 9:20, we're back at Ascot. Yesterday was a very royal affair, and we'll find out from Paul Hawkins who's going to be there today.
Oh, see, now I'm intrigued. You just said Ascot.
That's the correct way to
Is that the way to do it rather than Ascot?
Yeah, yesterday, I see, I've always said Ascot, and then yesterday they were all going Ascot, and you have to say it with you.
Ascot.
So I've been saying it wrong my whole life.
Oh, we're off to Ascot.
But we've all learnt something this morning. Ascot is the way that they
If
say
you've
it.
been to Ascot, or if you'd rather not waste the money and just go down the
No, it's
boozer
great
instead.
fun. Don't be grumpy. It's great
Oh,
fun.
it's just too posh for me. But anyway, GBViews at GBnews.com.
He's a man of the people, yes. He's not one for the champagne tents and the
I'm not actually.
the free afternoon teas.
It's not me.
Whereas I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I don't get into the fancy bit though. I don't get into the royal
No, you're the
enclosure.
people's princess, aren't you?
I am the people's princess. You know what? That's so embarrassing. Someone came up to me in Nottingham last week and said, "Oh, it's Ellie, the people's princess," and I was like, "Oh, self-appointed." I said it once, and anyway, it haunts me.
It's stuck. Well, it's,
Yeah,
not, it's not wrong.
Well, but anyway, I was the people's princess yesterday because I was in with everybody and we were watching all the races. It was great fun. So, no, it's great fun.
Oh, well,
That's
there you
good.
go. Let us know what you think. Now, it's almost time for the UK's most famous music festival, which again is a bit. You see, that's the other side of the equation for me. Too grungy.
Oh, I
anyway,
wouldn't be here either, yeah.
But ticket holders are already descending upon Worthy Farm.
Yeah, in Somerset. The
Is that what
big.
it's called?
Yeah.
Worthy Farm.
Worthy Farm in Somerset. Yeah, it's very famous, yeah. The big Glastonbury headliners this year for the Pyramid Stage include Sir Elton John, the Arctic Monkeys and Guns N' Roses. It's a great lineup, isn't it? But it has caused some controversy because there are no female headliners.
But there are some people, there are some surprise guests, aren't there? Let's get all the Glasgow gossip, but all the way from Nice. Tell me what, Stephanie Tecci, what you do? I know you're going to Glasgow this weekend, but what are you doing in Nice now? What on earth is going on with you?
Oh my gosh, it's been too much, Stephen. I covered the Monte Carlo TV festival, and now I'm covering the Festival of Creativity Cannes Lion. But I am leaving today, so I'll be leaving the beaches of Nice to go to the fields of Worthy Farm tomorrow. So it's going to be two completely different outlooks, but I can't wait to get my wellies. I've already got my leopard print tent out, so I'm all systems go for Glasgow.
Oh, Steph, you live the life. It's very tough, isn't it? Having to be in Cannes to report, then having to go to Glasgow. It's really, really tough for you. My heart does bleed. But it's very interesting. It's very interesting this year, isn't it? Because we've got some amazing headliners, but no women to be found. It's caused some controversy, hasn't it?
I'm getting really tired of the music industry snubbing women because, you know, from the Brit Awards, we found that women were not being nominated in the main prize act. And now with Glastonbury, now we've got three big headliners who are amazing in their own right. You know, Elton John, Guns N' Roses and the Arctic Monkeys, which, you know, they're there by right. No one should be there by sex. But you do want to balance it out a bit. And Emily Davis, who is the organiser of Glastonbury, said it's a wide wider industry problem. She said at the end of the day, she hasn't managed to secure a female act because of music labels. Music labels are not putting forward their female acts to get on stage. And it's a lot of politics towards why we're not seeing any female acts this year. She's hoping by next year they should secure someone. I'm thinking it's going to be Taylor Swift, actually, Ellie, which might be good news for you, because she announced that she is bringing her Eras tour to London. So I do feel like we will have that big shining act next year, but this year it'll be a miss. But that's not to say we won't get a few surprise guests. Elton John, this is going to be his last UK tour date as a part of his farewell Yellow Brick tour. And he said that he's going to be bringing some surprise guests. So I'm hoping we're going to get some glamorous females on stage. But we do have the likes of Lizzo, who will be performing on the Pyramid stage. And then also we've got Debbie Harry, who will be there with Blondie.
Oh, well, see, so there's some really strong female voices. It just seems really odd that record labels, who are basically trying to sell their wares, aren't wanting to sell the women.
Yeah, well, Stephen, I feel like it's a bigger conversation that has been happening in the industry right now about sexism and female talent not having that equal footing as their male counterparts, which is a shame because it's 2023. There's loads of good female acts out there, and I'm sure Glastonbury, with all its power, all of its might, they could have, got secured at least one female to headline the Pyramid stage.
You never know. Maybe they can squeeze Queen Bee on.
Well, she's already done it, hasn't she? And what a great performance that was, Steph. But, I mean, heading down to Worthy Farm is not going to be without its challenges, is it? I mean, transport is always an issue heading down to Glastonbury. But also, we've been talking about the weather. It could be quite wet and quite hot for you down there.
Yeah, I would say definitely anyone who's going to bring their wellies, because it's looking like a mixture of showers and sun. The thing about Worthy Farm, once the sun comes out, it feels so nice and hot. But if it rains, it tends to be a muddy affair. And in Glastonbury, all you see is just a sea of tents surrounded by mud. So I think it's always good to bring the wellies with you. And in terms of transport, last year we had the big train strikes, but that did not put people off. This year is expected 200,000 people are expected to make their way to Worthy Farm from today. So they are going to be getting there by coach, train, by cars, but the festival have said do expect traffic. So give yourself a lot of time if you are heading to the festival this weekend.
I know you really do have a leopard print tent, but what are the wellies leopard print as well?
Stephen, you know me too well. They are leopard print wellies.
Steph, we can't wait to see your outfits on Instagram. That's what I'm going to be there for. But good luck getting down there. Enjoy your flight home from Cannes.
So much. I look forward to catching up with you guys soon.
All right, bye, darling.
Take care.
Oh,
it's fabulous. We love our Steph,
we do
don't
love our Steph. Yeah, and she leads life, that one. She leads the life.
She must be exhausted. She hasn't been in the UK for a fortnight. It's just swanning from hotel to hotel. Sounds glamorous, but actually...
I don't know. I think it sounds great to me.
Would you do it?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Can. Glasgow.
Could be worse, couldn't it?
Could be worse. I bet she's glamping as well. We didn't get to ask her that.
Oh, I don't know. No, I don't know.
Anyway.
Just put her own tent up. Anyway, still to come, fear within the force. As one judge calls out the Met's treatment of a female officer, we'll take you through all the details. It's in the papers this morning. David Mellor and Scarlett Maguire are going through the details.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain.
Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel. Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 8:39. Good morning to you. Time to go through the papers with former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, David Mellor, excuse me, and former Labour advisor and currently astounded lady, Margaret Maguire. Scarlett Maguire. I'm calling Margaret. Where's Margaret come from?
Take two.
Take two.
We're talking about Maggie Thatcher, that's fine.
You're astounded by my hair transplant.
I'm just so impressed.
Clever, isn't it?
It is very clever. I was thinking when you say, well, they rip it from here.
They took a strip out the back and stitch it up.
And it's just regrown.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it looks great, doesn't it?
It does. It does. It looks great. And actually, yeah.
It takes a couple of years.
Right.
To sort of sort itself
Anyway,
out.
if you want to talk about hair,
you could be a donor. You could be a donor, David. It'd be fine.
You do have a wonderful head of hair, David, but welcome to both of you.
Yes.
Scarlett, this is a pretty remarkable story, isn't it, in the Times? This is Prince Michael of Kent. He lobbied for a Putinista visa.
Absolutely. No, it's
a bit more about this.
Well, it's Prince Michael of Kent who uses. I mean, I'm sure he's one of the royals that Prince Charles wants to push aside, right? Because he absolutely abuses his position. And so his private office lobbied the Foreign Office to obtain a fast-track UK visa for a Russian financier closely linked to Putin and who's since been officially sanctioned. And the more you read about it, it's just absolutely shocking. I mean, well done, The Times. They've done a big investigation into it, and they've actually found out the amount which we sort of knew that there was shady business going on. But basically, he said, oh, this guy has to come over for a meeting of some hedge fund or something, and he's got to come over within 6 days, so we need a visa fast. I mean, it is just absolutely shocking. And you saw this, I mean, I remember during COVID where you found out that if people were rich enough or important enough, they could break all the regulations. I mean, actually, I'm not talking about Partygate here. I'm talking about people who were allowed to travel when we weren't, and people who were allowed to take flights because they were important. And I just think, you do think this is just awful.
I just think it's, particularly maybe in a case like this, it's someone who's just never quite lived in the real world and just think it doesn't apply to them.
No, I remember reading a story years ago about how that he'd approached somebody saying he wanted to be on a board, and they went, "Oh well, yeah, maybe I can fix it," and he expected to be paid. I mean, this was at least 15 years ago, £100,000 a year. For what? Yeah. I mean, this is and it is that sort of thing that makes you. I mean, you know, King Charles is right. People like that actually need to be pushed aside.
OK, David, to the Times, looking at the Met Police.
This is a pretty awful story, actually. I mean, a lot of the stories we cover are awful. This is a complaint made by a police officer that she had been attacked by a man called Adam Provan, a fellow officer. He was convicted yesterday of 6 counts of raping their fellow police officer and 2 counts of raping a 16-year-old girl. He was sacked from the Met in March 2019, but had been a serving officer when he committed the offences. But the real point is that the complaining officer was effectively told, quotes, to keep quiet for the sake of her career. You see, I'd love to say, how dare they say this about the police? We know that couldn't possibly be true. But my immediate reaction is, yes, I bet that is true.
See, that is...
And how does one purge this unbelievably... I mean, we're talking about macho men. I mean, it's one thing to be macho because you're down the gym pumping iron all the time. It's quite another to be macho because you behave in the vile way that is described here. And it's also the fact that, you know, and this was, there's all of there's evidence that a group of officers are allowed to go on, you know, the same sort of WhatsApp site, and they lead each other on because most people, their behaviour is conditioned by the fact that they are ashamed and embarrassed about it. But if you know the half a dozen people you're working with think the same, then there's no constraints at all.
No.
But what was so shocking is that after the Sarah Everard case, who was raped and murdered by Wayne Couzens, a serving police officer, various women police officers who'd retired went on radio and television to talk about how they were always frightened about calling men out because actually, I mean, it wasn't just bad for their career, it's that they felt they wouldn't be protected if they got into a difficult situation.
I just don't know how it can have got to this. I mean, I know that similar things used to be said about the army, or the armed forces, I should say.
Yes.
Back in the day. That's been wiped out now.
Well, I think...
Come on. If you actually deal with the armed forces and deal with the people who are running it, as I do and have done, honestly, if anyone put a complaint forward, any of the girls there put a complaint forward, it would not be swept under the carpet.
Well, I've read quite a few stories saying the opposite, but I think the police, and in particular the Met, I think is much, much worse. And every time one of these come up, they go, oh, well, you know, we really are trying to sort it out. I mean, look, Dame Louise Casey did a review saying that giving example after example after example, and then saying the police are institutionally racist and sexist, which the head of the Met said absolutely not. And yet still we get these stories. They're not getting... I mean, you're right. The armed forces actually did an investigation into themselves, or they commissioned the Equality Commission to do it, and actually looked at themselves and started trying to change it. And all we get from the police is, we will do it. And this is one story after another.
It's the belief that if you're a police officer, no other police officer will call you out, and when they do, they're the ones who get the stick. And, you know, I think I'm getting heartily sick of reading day after day, this remorseless stuff, which I actually, for the most part, believe about how we cannot trust the people. You know, what was it? Quis custodiet? Who shall protect us from our protectors? Well, who's protecting us from police officers like this one?
Yeah.
But because, I mean, another story is I'm also in the Times, is sex predators tolerated at elite unit leading fight against serious crime. And this is about, I mean, that actually because, and this is about macho men, actually, this is about alpha men, and oh, we're alpha men, we're really important, we can do this. And actually, if you remember, not so long ago, the Red Arrows had exactly the same. And there's this slight thing is that these sort of superhero men can do whatever they want. And actually, and the problem with saying alpha men are wonderful is that they think, yeah, I'm an alpha man and I can do what I want.
But there's a difference between alpha men and misogynists.
Oh yeah, no. I know. But this is
sexual.
No. I mean, there are lots of really good alpha men who wouldn't dream of doing that. And I'm sure you're one of them, Stephen. But what I'm saying is, and actually David's right. It's about getting them in a group. You know, it's always so. It's the national crime people. It's the Red Arrows. You get a group of alpha males who are sort of in their way superstars, and then they think they can do.
But
what
I think
they
that I think we on the question of descriptions. My sense of an alpha male is just somebody who is good pumping, the iron and basically keeps fit and does all that stuff. A lot of these people that are these sort of sex predators in the police force, they got big fat asses and big guts and couldn't run 50 yards. It's not like the police are actually up for anything other than the description of a male who just behaves appallingly badly and can get away with it.
Yeah, that's the thing, is it? Look, we need to leave it there, you two. Scarlett Maguire, David Miller, thank you very much indeed. Good to see you this morning.
Now, the Prince of Wales is celebrating his 41st birthday today. Happy birthday to him. And he's expected to unveil a major campaign on homelessness later this month.
Now, it is a cause the future king has championed since childhood when his mum, Diana, Princess of Wales, took him to a homeless shelter.
Well, to mark his 40th last year, Prince William helped to sell the Big Issue magazine with Dave Martin, a street vendor. Well, our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker, went to meet him.
Homelessness has always stuck with me as a topic and as an issue I want to fight for. And so I've done everything I can to kind of raise the profile of homelessness. And I want to do a lot more.
In Prince William's view, homelessness is an overlooked and misunderstood problem. He refuses to believe the issue is just a fact of life and thinks a continued focus and a big support network could be the answer. Chris Fauci-Stead, frontline director at The Big Issue, agrees.
I think homelessness can absolutely be eradicated. If we think back to COVID, every single person basically was brought in. So it can be done, but there are long-term issues that need to be solved around mental health, addiction and enough funding. And I think there still needs to be a lot more work on that. And I hope that actually that's where William will put his focus.
The Big Issue magazine exists to give homeless, long-term unemployed and marginalised people the opportunity to earn money. To mark his 40th birthday last year, the Prince of Wales went undercover on the streets of London, selling magazines with Big Issue vendor Dave Martin. William was only meant to spend 20 minutes with Dave, but stayed for a whole hour until every magazine was sold.
He came across as just like you and me, we got chatting natural like you do.
He may be future king, but William chose to spend his 40th birthday last year surprising Dave with birthday cake at his pitch in Hammersmith. In return, Dave gifted his own artwork, which now hangs in Kensington Palace, according to a thank you letter the Prince had written him. William also penned an article for The Big Issue, highlighting how vendors are barely given a second glance by passers-by. Recent research from Shelter shows more than 250,000 people are homeless in England. Numbers living in temporary accommodation has risen by an alarming 74% in the last decade, something the charity believes is driven by the chronic shortage of social homes and an over-reliance on expensive and unstable private renting. Kensington Palace says His Royal Highness is expected to unveil a major campaign on homelessness later this month.
Because of who he is and connections with the issue, it'd be good for him to highlight the situation.
Prince William hopes to bring his own children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis, to see what he calls fantastic organisations doing inspirational work to support those most in need, just as Princess Diana did for him. Cameron Walker, GB News.
Well, Cameron's here in the studio, hot-footed it here. Cameron, good morning to you.
Good morning.
I tell you what, I do find it quite remarkable, actually, just how determined the Prince of Wales is to really push his agenda on helping other people.
Absolutely. I mean, he first was taken to a homeless shelter when he was 11 years old by his mother, Diana, Princess of Wales, and I think he sees it, perhaps, as trying to keep her legacy alive, because she did a lot of work for homelessness charities and people when she was alive, and the Prince, we believe, wants to do exactly the same thing. Of course, he did that big topic with the big issue last year for his 40th. Centrepoint as well is a charity which is close to his heart. It was one of his first patronages, actually, back in 2005, and it's a charity which helps young people in particular try and get out of homelessness, or those at risk of homelessness. And he was at Reuben House last week, which is a brand new shelter for young people, just to get them on the property ladder. But it's really an interesting way to do it, because whatever their salary is, whether they earn 10 grand a year, 20, 30, whatever, only a third of their take-home pay they have to spend on rent, which in London is pretty hard to come by, and Prince William was very impressed by that. And when he was there, he did an interview with the Sunday Times with Roy Anika, where he kind of gave little hints about what he is going to plan to announce later on this month. But I thought what was quite telling was he brought his children, George, Charlotte and Louis, into the conversation. And he says, when we're driving through London, if we see a homeless person, I point out to my children, there's a man there. Why is he there? What's it all about? Because, of course, Prince William is very aware that he is in an incredibly privileged position with 3 houses and with the Duchy of Cornwall, 135,000 acres. And, of course, his kids are in a privileged position as well. So it's trying to make them aware of that and that they need to help other people.
And that is, I think, the power of the Prince and Princess of Wales. We haven't got long with you, but it is that people power, isn't it? They remember people like Prince William remembered Dave Martin. It is that brings the power and highlights these causes.
Absolutely, and I think Prince William has this convening power. He can get people around the table which wouldn't necessarily all be talking at the same time, and it's that convening power which can really perhaps make a difference. So we'll have to see more of that perhaps later on this month.
Yeah, that's impressive stuff, actually. Cameron, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Coming up, we'll bring you the latest from Royal Ascot. First, so here's your weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. It's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Sunny start for many of us, and it's another warm one today with temperatures once again above average for the time of year. But as the temperatures rise, there will be a few more showers developing, fewer compared with recent days. Many places will escape dry. We've still got low pressure close by. We've still got this humid air coming up from the south and southwest. And there are still some showers about, mainly central and western Scotland this morning, Northern Ireland, and then developing across parts of England and into Wales as well by the afternoon. But they're not going to affect everyone. They'll be localised. Even in those areas, such as the west and the north, where we're likely to see showers, some places will avoid them and stay dry. Others will get hit by thunder, lightning and hail once again, and the risk of torrential rain and flash flooding in 1 or 2 spots. But towards the southeast, that's where it's most likely to stay dry with highs of 27 or 28 Celsius, but it's warm for all across the UK. And the showers do ease away into the evening with clear spells widely overnight. 1 or 2 mist patches forming, but otherwise it looks like it's going to be a fine night, if rather warm once again in some spots like Cardiff and London, temperatures staying at 16 or 17 Celsius, so perhaps an uncomfortable one for sleeping. I think around coastal areas, in rural spots, a bit fresher, but widely, again, tomorrow we're going to see sunny skies from the word go. This time there'll be fewer showers again, but they'll be mainly affecting East Wales into the Midlands, north of London, and then into northern England later. 1 or 2 elsewhere, but actually for much of Scotland, Northern Ireland, southern counties of England, it's largely dry with sunny spells. And it's a bit warmer in many places with that additional sunshine. Low 20s for Scotland and Northern Ireland, mid to high 20s across parts of England and Wales. Now we're going to see those temperatures rise even further in the south on Friday and Saturday, approaching 30 Celsius in some spots, whilst further north it stays fairly changeable.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in their home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good morning to you. It's 9 o'clock on Wednesday, the 21st of June. Today, the inflation rate remains unchanged at 8.7%. It's a shocker. We're going to ask if the UK is now on track for a mortgage time bomb.
The UK is now the inflation nation. Inflation's persisting at 8.7%. The Bank of England now almost certain to raise interest rates tomorrow when it meets. What does it mean for savers? What does it mean for mortgage holders? I'll be giving you all the latest.
Also this morning,
search efforts have continued through last night and today. We know there's about 40 hours of breathable air. So I want to reiterate, this is a very complex search and the unified team is working around the clock.
The search for the missing Titan sub has reached a critical point as banging is picked up by sonar devices, and new documents show safety concerns were raised before the vessel's disappearance.
Also figure this out, we're going to be live at Royal Ascot on day 2 of the annual horse racing event.
And there is still time to keep your comments coming through on email, gbnews@gbnews.com, or you can tweet us at GBNews.
Good morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
OK, let's crack straight on with our main news this morning, and it's the new figures from the Office for National Statistics. They've been released this morning. They show the UK's inflation rate is unchanged at 8.7%.
Well, joining us now is our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan, and assistant editor at The Spectator, Cindy Yu. Good morning to you both. And Liam, let's start with you, shall we, and your reaction to those figures that dropped at about 7 o'clock this morning. It's fair to say you were shocked.
I was ashen-faced, and not just because it was early in the morning, but because I was genuinely shocked. I thought that the inflation number would start with an 8. I was given a bit of a stick on social media for saying that yesterday, but not in my wildest dreams did I think inflation would persist stubbornly at 8.7%. And it's not just the headline rate of inflation which is worrying. Food price inflation is still elevated. It was 19.1% in April, so from April 22 to April 23, the basket of food increased by 19.1%, the price. It was 18.3% still in May, even though wholesale food prices have been coming down. And there's a concept that economists use called core inflation, Ellie. That's the inflation rate if you strip out food and energy prices, which are very volatile. It's the kind of underlying price pressures, wage bargaining, supply chain issues, shortages of components, things that are very difficult to shift. And core inflation, and this is what's really going to worry financial markets, it's actually going up. It's not that it's staying put, it's going up. It was 6.2% in March, 6.8% in April, and 7.1% in May. So these are worrying numbers. Now, this means that tomorrow the Bank of England's not only going to raise interest rates, it may actually raise interest rates not just by 1/4 of a point, but by 1/2 point. And that will, unfortunately, have knock-on effects for mortgages, particularly people who are coming off 5, 3 and 2-year fixed rate deals that were fixed between 2017 and 2020 when rates were ultra low. Those low rates will unwind and people will face increases in their mortgage rates from, say, 1 or 2% up to 5, 6 or 7%, which is very painful indeed.
What's your advice for people who are coming... Sorry, Stephen. What's your advice for people who are coming off those fixed rates?
Well, I have to do the proviso. I'm not a financial advisor. So as a journalist, my advice would be this. What I think a lot of mortgage providers will be doing, a lot of mortgage companies, rather than moving to repossession, there'll be huge political pushback against that. They'll be suggesting to mortgage holders who are struggling with monthly payments to extend their loan terms from, say, 25 to 35 or even 45 years, and maybe without charge. I think there'll be pressure from ministers without charge and making it administratively easy for mortgage holders to shift from repayment mortgage, when you pay back the capital and the interest, to just an interest-only mortgage for a period of time. Both those changes, Ellie, lengthening the term, moving to an interest-only mortgage, should bring down monthly repayments. And I think that is an important thing that will happen. I also think there's going to be a debate about something called MIRAS, which is mortgage interest relief at source. This goes back to the 70s and 80s. MIRAS, for people, they're principal residents, not buy-to-let, not second homes. If you've got a mortgage on your principal residence, the interest payments that you make, they can be deducted against your tax. It all sounds very complicated. There's one other thing I'd like to say. We talk about mortgages being withdrawn, right? Anyone who's got an existing mortgage, okay, the mortgage company isn't going to withdraw your loan. That's not what that means. When we say mortgages being withdrawn, we mean new mortgages coming to the market that are being repriced. The prices of them are being changed changed, so deals are being shifted. We have to be careful about the language so we don't spread alarm.
Yeah, look, with all that, I mean, there's very practical things then which may be put on the table, Cindy, for people who've got a mortgage. What about what the government can do here? Because we are now lagging behind. We're becoming an outrider when it comes to inflation levels.
This is a huge political problem for the government for two reasons. The first is that Rishi Sunak made halving inflation or getting it down one of his 5 key pledges at the beginning of the year. Now, he was thinking that by this point it would already be halved. It's, as Liam said, it's not going even in the right direction, let alone anywhere near that achievement. And I think the problem is that inflation was never really down to the government per se. You know, it was more down to the Bank of England with the interest rates. So by making inflation one of his key pledges, he made it the government's problem, when actually the government has limited levers to influence this compared to, let's say, the Bank of England, who will make a decision tomorrow. So that's one problem. The other problem is the mortgage holders' renewals, as Lim said. You know, going into the next election, this is going to be a running pain for people whose mortgages run out. So it's not going to be one hit. It's going to be a running pain where people are thinking, my life is not better off under God knows how many years of the Tory government. Look at all these Partygate stuff. It's all kind of coming together. And I think that is a political problem for them too.
It's a big headache for the PM. Let's just join him now. He's at the Ukraine Recovery Conference.
Renewables, hydrogen and electric vehicles. And a startup nation, which helped spark names like PayPal, WhatsApp and Revolut, with a thriving tech sector which actually had a record year in 2022. Because the truth is, that opportunity is still there today. In fact, the war has only proved how much Ukraine has to offer. When I visited Kyiv last November, I saw this for myself. I saw Ukraine's incredible spirit. A spirit, yes, of strength and defiance, but also of ingenuity and innovation. In a converted office block, I met tech experts, civilian and military, who were working together to find new ways to bolster the country's defences. They were networking mobile phones so that people across Ukraine could download an app which would allow their phone to pick up the sound of the Shahed drones and feed back the location so that Ukrainian air defense could track them and shoot them down. During the winter, Russia tried to destroy Ukraine's energy grid. By February, over 40% of power generation was down. But now, because of that incredible ingenuity and defiance, Ukraine has got the grid back online, and they're even able to start exporting electricity back to Europe. As we've seen in Bakhmut and Mariupol, what Russia cannot take, it will seek to destroy. They want to do the same to Ukraine's economy. And the scale of the challenge is real. The war brought a 29% fall in Ukraine's GDP last year. But just look at the streets of Kyiv. Despite the threat of attack, people are getting on with their lives and getting on with business. President Zelensky's government is determined to drive reforms to become more open, more transparent, and ready for investment. This is a vibrant, dynamic, creative European country that refuses to be subdued. So together with our allies, we will maintain our support for Ukraine's defense and for the counter-offensive. We will stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes for them to continue and to win this war. We'll also stand with them as they win the peace and harness all of that ingenuity and defiance to build the future that they deserve. The question for us today is, what can we do to support this, to fast-track recovery and help Ukraine unleash its potential? It's clear Russia must pay for the destruction that they've inflicted. So we're working with allies to explore lawful routes to use Russian assets. And on Monday, we published new legislation to allow us to keep sanctions in place until Russia pays up. But beyond that, we must bring to bear a partnership of governments, international financial institutions, and business leaders, all of us here today, to make this happen. The British government will continue to play its full part, And I'm proud that today we're announcing a multi-year commitment to support Ukraine's economy. Over 3 years, we will provide loan guarantees worth $3 billion. We're also launching a new UK-Ukraine tech bridge to foster investment and talent, along with support for green energy and more, all part of a vast collective effort from allies and partners around the world, including significant new support from the EU, which is also being announced this week. Financial institutions are playing their part. The IMF is putting $15 billion into Ukraine over the next 4 years as part of a $115 billion commitment by the G7 and its partners. And institutions like the EBRD are providing seed capital to support private sector-led growth. Because above all, we must build a platform for business. Only they can truly crowd in the innovation and investment that Ukraine needs. And that's why we're launching the Ukraine Business Compact, for the private sector to pledge their support for Ukraine's recovery and reconstruction. And I am delighted to announce today that over 400 businesses from 38 countries with a combined market cap of $4.9 trillion have now signed up. Now, the City of London has a huge amount to offer in their deep and liquid capital markets and world-class finance expertise. So there is no better place to announce today the new London Conference Framework for War Risk Insurance. This is a huge step forward towards helping insurers to underwrite investments into Ukraine, removing one of the biggest barriers and giving investors the confidence they need to act. With this and everything that we do here, we are sending a message that our support on the battlefield and beyond cannot be outlasted, and that Ukraine's incredible spirit will prevail. Now, in a moment, I'll hand over to my friend, President Zelensky. But first, I'd just like to share something that I heard recently. It's about a Ukrainian soldier fighting to defend Bakhmut. He was stationed in an empty house, not far from the front line, surrounded by the destruction of war. When he could snatch a moment of free time, he used it to plant seeds. He was trying to create a plot of vegetables, hoping that by the time the homeowners returned, they would have begun to grow. What a profound expression of hope. And you know, from that house to this hall, we're doing the same thing. We're planting the seeds of Ukraine's future. Today, we can water them, and in time, the Ukrainian people will harvest them. And now, it is my great pleasure to introduce President Zelensky. Vladimir, you have the floor.
OK, let's just come out of that then, and we'll bring you what President Zelensky said a little bit later on. We've still got Cindy Yu and Liam Halligan here. Cindy, it's talking about, there's the PM talking about watering the seeds, all about economic recovery in Ukraine, and it's not that it's not a fair point to make, it's just the fact some people will watch that and say, well, you're coming up with all this while Britain's going to rack and ruin today.
It's quite jarring, isn't it? You're talking about economic recovery in obviously a war-torn country that we have all cared deeply about, but while things at home are not good at all. I mean, the only justification I can say for that is that this Ukraine Recovery Conference has global attendees. You know, the Americans are there, the Japanese are there, the French are there. It's the West, basically, is the West's reaction to counter basically China's approach to rebuild Ukraine. So it's a soft power move, and he just didn't pivot fast enough. The Prime Minister didn't pivot fast enough to the domestic problems that we're seeing today.
Liam?
I have to say, I've got a lot of respect for Rishi Sunak, but I think he's just demonstrated there his lack of political savvy and experience. These are extremely worrying figures on inflation here in the UK. A lot of people around the country will be listening to the radio, tuning into television, talking as they get to work about this inflation number. I'm not saying he should have ripped up his speech on Ukraine at all. There are dignitaries there, as Cindy said. but he should, at the very beginning, have spoken from the hip, down the lens, telling British people this is going to be OK. Look, of course the war in Ukraine has had a bearing on inflation, but wholesale gas prices, they're a tenth of what they were at their peak. Oil prices are 30% down on the year. This isn't about Ukraine anymore. He should have been focused there, at least at the top of his speech, on the UK.
OK. Liam and Cindy, thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you. Well, those inflation figures, I'm sure, are going to be talked about in To The Point. That's coming up at 9:30 with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner. They're standing by to tell us all about it now. Good morning to you guys. What's coming up on today's programme?
Morning.
Morning.
Well, inflation is the top story for
Yeah,
us. We're going to be talking to Tory MPs. This is the end now for the Tory party, for the Tory government. I suspect it feels like this is the day they lost the election. It's an economic catastrophe for ordinary families because mortgage rates are going to go soaring again tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to have the latest on the submarine expedition, of course. We're going to be talking to a couple of adventurers about the mindset of people who want to take part in these risky endeavours. And we're going to be watching to see if there's any news, of course, on that story.
OK. Thank you both. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on. But don't go anywhere, because we're off to the races.
We are.
Very shortly, live at Royal Ascot, you have to say, not Ascot, on day 2 of the annual horse racing event. This is Breakfast on GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel. Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It is 9:20 and it is day 2 of Royal Ascot. So there you go. That's the way to do it, isn't it?
Yes,
You were there yesterday.
and yesterday was a fabulous day. Yes, we saw King Charles, we saw Queen Camilla, obviously their first Ascot as King and Queen. Of course, it was an event that was so loved by the late Queen Elizabeth II, so
nice.
quite a lovely tribute, really, that so many of them were there. But what do we have to look forward to today? Well, our national
Horse
reporter,
racing.
Paul Hawkins is there. He's soaking up the atmosphere. It's not even open yet. Oh, and he's wearing a hat as well. Paul, what have we got to look forward to today?
Yeah, lots of horse racing and potentially another appearance by the royal family. Chatting to a couple of people just now, and they said the royal family may turn up, the king, the queen consort may turn up today. We just don't know. They kind of wake up and think, well, how am I feeling today? Do I fancy popping down to Ascot? Of course, it was a really emotional day yesterday. If we have a look at the race course here, they were on a carriage, and you will have known, Ellie, that they were making their way round. Lots of waves, lots of cheers. The first Royal Ascot since Queen Elizabeth II passed away, and also Queen Camilla as well, wearing a brooch as a kind of little nod to the Queen as well. So look, lots to talk about the Queen. There was lots of people wearing hats, including yourself, and that's why someone told me to wear a hat today. That's why I'm wearing this rather fetching fedora. And as we can see there's the it's like an army of stewards waiting to be deployed to look after the many racegoers that will be streaming through the doors at 10:30 later today. The big race at Ascot is the Gold Cup. That's tomorrow. Today there's a load of other races and some horses.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's the right sort of hat, Paul.
I think you needed a top hat and tails. Didn't fancy it, no?
Ah, yeah. No, not really, to be honest. In fact, this is the only hat I've got, and as you were saying to Mark Longhurst yesterday, difficult to get any sort of hat through expenses, so it'll have to be a tenner from Value Fashion in Bushmills in Northern Ireland.
Oh well, there you go. There you go. I mean, it's a nice day out, isn't it? I guess if you like a bit of a drink and you've got a couple of quid spare to bet, Paul.
Yeah, definitely. And if you know nothing about horse racing like me, you just plumb for the horse with the weirdest name or one that you feel some sort of link to. That seems to be how most people who know nothing about racing tend to pick the horse that they're going to bet on. I have to be honest, when the horses go around the parade ring, I've watched that a few times. They all just look very powerful, and I guess you've got to know what you're talking about if you want to discern which one's likely to win the race.
Yeah.
Well, one name that people do know, Paul, even if you're not into horse racing, is that of Frankie Dettori. And this is his last Ascot, isn't it? It's been his last year before he's set to retire. It's going to be quite an emotional one, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Ascot, one of the big race meetings, and Frankie Dettori, as you say, he's one of those figures in horse racing that transcend the sport in the same way David Beckham did in football, in the same way Anthony Joshua does in boxing. So, yeah, it is going to be an emotional farewell for him, and yeah, looking forward to it. Everyone here, you know, everyone loves Frankie Dettori.
Paul, look, you have a good day. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on. Thanks very much indeed.
Yes, there you go. Us like a gent, yes.
Yes.
Well, hopefully it's going to be free of protesters, because Animal Rising have said they're not going to protest at Ascot. They're going to focus on greyhound racing instead. Right. They're going to focus their attention to the dogs now, not the horses. So,
well, fair enough.
We'll keep you across that.
And the inflation rates, which are shocking, it is like a real shocker. Gareth in Bridgend says, inflation high again then, nothing to do with public sector pay rises of 5% plus. Yeah, well, it's a fair point. Everyone's wanting more money because inflation's high, but is that then fuelling more inflation? Bill says it's like the UK government is printing money.
Oh, dear. Alan says, I'm surprised that inflation hasn't dropped this month as the diesel price has dropped dramatically.
Yeah, it has.
I think it's shocked many, many people, even our own Liam Halligan, who's been in the industry 30 years. He says he's never been more shocked at printed figures that have been released.
I mean, Bruce in Northumberland says raising interest rates will not reduce inflation as the cost of energy and food, including farm inflation, is running over 30%, and that's going to maintain the inflation levels. Farm inflation at 30%. Now, that's shocking. And, of course, that's going to feed directly into what we pay at the supermarket.
Yeah, and David is putting this all into perspective. He says he's a homeowner. He had a fixed rate at 1.91%. Now looking at remortgaging at 5 to 6%. It's going to be too expensive to stay in the property, and that's going to be the reality for so many people, isn't it?
And Karen says, I mean, yeah, mortgage is pretty bad, but what about rent? Because that's going up to £1,000 a month for a 2-up, 2-down terrace house in the Manchester suburbs. We renters are being forgotten. I mean, again, I think that's an extraordinary amount of money. In London, for something much smaller, it'd still be a lot more than that. But, I mean, that's still grim, Karen, I have to say. Keep your thoughts coming through. GBviews at GBNews.com. But up next, it's Bev and Andrew, who are to the point. Morning, you two.
Morning.
Good morning, good morning. We're going to be bringing you the latest about the sub, of course, the OceanGate vessel. We're still waiting for any good news on that. And inflation, bad
Terrible
news.
figures, inflation, really bad. Probably the day the Tories lost the next election.
Let's see.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories